gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash, the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean,
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. I'm here between now and 1 o'clock. There's loads to talk about. And the question I'm asking this morning is, why does it take the American president to come to our country to tell us the truth we know to be the case about migration? Donald Trump is in Scotland. He's talking about migration. He says that there's an invasion. He says it's killing Europe. And he tells leaders like Starmer, get your act together. We'll reflect on all of that. I want your thoughts on it as well. 0344 499 1000. Do you think Starmer will actually listen to the President of the United States? We're talking as well about the asylum seekers' problems in Epping, the doctors' strikes, and whether Keir Starmer should recognise Palestine as a state. By the way, the clue to the answer is no. We're talking to Zach Wagman and indeed Simon Danchuk on our debate desk as well. We'll talk about the doctors' strike. They've already got 22%. Why do they need another 29.2%? Also, big story in the front of the Sun this morning. Greg Wallace, the former, it's not called Mastermind, it's called MasterChef host. I'm not a grouper, sex pest, or a flasher. And John Turod is not a racist. Shames MasterChef host. Still refuses to take blame. We'll talk about that later on as well. I want your thoughts on all of these matters. 0344 499 1000. You may actually have seen the story yesterday. Kevin O'Sullivan had a cracker story about the fact that Uber Eats people, Deliveroo drivers and so on, none of them have been fined. Not a single major company has been fined. Guess who the government are coming after? Small businesses. Kevin spoke to someone who is a small business owner, a fish and chip shop, fined £40,000, later reduced to 28,000, but still heck of a lot of money for a small business owner who inadvertently employed an undocumented migrant. Has the government actually got a grip of this? Also, we'll reflect on the story in Portsmouth that I brought you yesterday on Drive, which was, of course, to do with the council chief who was suppressing free speech there in regard to an asylum seeker who was in an asylum hotel, who has been charged with rape and sexual assault, and the chief executive of the council told one of the councillors who spoke to me yesterday that he was not allowed to talk about it. Yes, really. Lots to discuss here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can send me a voice message on that as well. You know I love voice notes, less than a minute please. We'll play out as many of those as we can. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number. You can send me a traditional text message on 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Loads to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. We're going to start with Graham Stewart, the very sensible Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness, in just a second here on Talk. Stay with us. Well, Donald Trump is here. He's in the UK. He's playing golf at the moment, and then he's going to talk to Starmer. This is a private visit. It's not the big state visit that's happening later this year. The first thing he had to talk about was immigration. Let's hear from the President of the United States.
I mean, there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. But you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, you know, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe, many countries in Europe. Some people, some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe. Well, I say two things to Europe. Stop the windmills. You're ruining your countries. I really mean it. It's so sad. You fly over and you see these windmills all over the place, ruining your beautiful fields and valleys and killing your birds, and if they're stuck in the ocean, ruining your oceans. Stop the windmills. That's what he does. I mean, you know, that's fine if he does that. That's up to him. It's not up to me. I'm with the United States. I'm not with France. I think it's terrible what happened with Hamas. They tapped everybody along, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what response Israel has to that. But it's getting to be that time.
Well, that was Donald Trump talking about a number of different issues there. Immigration, windmills, those kind of wind farms and so on that he's talking about. Also Starmer and Macron talking about recognising Palestine as a state. He talked about Starmer as well. Just one final clip to show you here.
I like your Prime Minister. He's slightly more liberal than I am, as you've probably heard. But he's a good man. He got a trade deal done. And, you know, they've been working on this deal for 12 years. He got it done. It's a good deal. It's a good deal for the UK. So, no, I'll be seeing him tomorrow, I guess, tomorrow evening.
That was Donald Trump there talking about Starmer. Well, let's get reaction from Graham Stewart, who is the MP for Beverley and Holderness for the Conservatives. Graham, good morning.
Good morning, Peter.
Do you agree with Donald Trump that there has been an invasion of migrants and that it is killing Europe?
Where I do agree with him is that we've lost control of it, and the fact that we as an island are allowing people to come from a safe country in the form of France, and they're coming over in record numbers when we had a government which promised to smash the gangs and bring it under control, is what's leading to so much upset and concern. We appear to have a government which was very clear about what it was promising to do and then has signally failed to do it.
What do you think it says about the fact that it takes, I mean, you've made those comments, you've been consistent in what you've said, we've talked before on a number of occasions, Graham. You know, what do you think it says that it takes the President of the United States to come to our country to reflect back what the situation is? Because Trump doesn't think that Starmer gets it, you clearly don't think that Starmer gets it, I don't think Starmer gets it in terms of migration. What do you think that says?
Well, he was pretty clear, wasn't he, the President? He said that those who weren't getting control of it, he said they were a total stiff, whatever that means in Trump speak. But clearly it's not a compliment. And he was including Keir Starmer in it. So it's hard to demur from the President's view there that the Prime Minister has not got a grip on this, doesn't seem to have the intent to get any control. And meanwhile, we have the situation which doubtless will come to, Peter, in places like Epping. So it's not good, but it hasn't taken Donald Trump, to answer your question, it hasn't taken Donald Trump. It's obvious to all of us every day that the government is failing on this, and it's not prepared to look at the measures. So Kemi Badenoch has said that we're going to have a proper look at the ECHR if we need to leave that. It may not be a silver bullet, but that we have to get control of this. It is not acceptable to the British people that we should carry on like this, and apparently that lawyers, that international agreements, whatever it is, can stop us doing the common sense thing, which is saying, look, the asylum seekers, some of them may be genuine, are in a safe country in France, and they are committing an illegal, a criminal act by coming over to the UK. And for us, instead of imprisoning them or punishing them or sending them where they should be sent to be processed, we instead welcome them. And what really infuriates people, all too often they appear to get a more generous treatment than people in need in this country. And that has reached a point in which the government needs to recognise. And if the president pointing it out in his very Trumpian manner is enough to get the Home Secretary and Keir Starmer to start taking this more seriously, then I think that's a good thing. We can't have anyone who speaks up on this treated as if they're some far-right extremist, wannabe terrorist and the like, let alone having people unable to talk about it because it's also sensitive. So that you then get to the point, the issue you raised in just now in Portsmouth. I mean, it's frightening. So you've got the government losing control, then you've got a kind of cover-up culture and a fear that there's a powder keg in the country. What people want is leadership.
Do you think there's a powder keg in this country?
Of the problem and firm action on it, and that's what we're not getting.
Do you think there's a powder keg in this country? I mean, neither of us, obviously, and I'm sure none of our viewers and listeners would want any form of violence to happen. We can't condone that even slightly, not at all. There have been a number of peaceful protests, of course, including in actually where we're talking about in Portsmouth yesterday. Do you think the country is on the brink, or would you be surprised?
Well, I very much hope not, Peter. What we've got to do is allow people to speak. That's why talk plays its role. The very fact that you and I are able to talk about it here, an elected politician, and you're, a national broadcaster, and we're talking about it, that eases a bit of the tension, because if people feel that they're being suppressed, that the thoughts that are going through their heads can't be spoken by the likes of you and me, then that leads to that pressure.
Well, on that exact note, Graham, I was talking to George Madgwick yesterday. He's a Reform UK councillor in Portsmouth, and he has made a complaint against Portsmouth City Council, against the chief executive there, because he was sent a text message and told not to talk about the fact that there were charges against an asylum seeker in regard to sexual offences. Now, we'll obviously not talk about those sexual offences because we don't want to prejudice a trial, but let's just remind ourselves about what George said to me yesterday, and then I'll get Graham's reaction to this. George, take me through what has happened to you in the last few days. We just have a problem with the audio there, unfortunately, but I was speaking to George Madgwick yesterday, and he was telling me that he has a formal complaint in with Portsmouth City Council and the chief executive there. Now, Portsmouth City Council have said they don't comment on individual staffing matters, but as a general concept, Graham, I think the suppression of free speech in this country is a very, very clear issue, and certainly when it comes to just the facts and saying that things that are actually to some degree in the public domain already about charges against some asylum seekers, not all of them, but some of them who are charged with sexual offences.
Yeah, and we've got to make sure that people can speak. As I say, that is the best way of ensuring that people accept the system as is, because they can hear their views being expressed, they can hear it being properly discussed. And obviously, I don't know the specific circumstances of the councillor in Portsmouth, but there have been too many instances, haven't there, Peter, over time, from Alison Pearson to others, where the sense that people are not able to speak out. And free speech isn't just always speaking with perfect balance and in a way that we'd all agree with. It's also being able to say things which are pretty unreasonable. There's a clear line in the law, but short of that, we have free speech. That means people can say things that are upsetting and perhaps erroneous. We should seek to correct that. But what we can't have to do is some sense in which you can be silenced, because otherwise it will lead to rising frustration. But there is frustration, quite rightly, with the fact that the government said it would smash the gangs and it hasn't. And I hope that we will see, whether the help of President Trump or otherwise, we'll see the government taking it much more seriously. But it's, of course, it's not just on this front. There's so many others on the economy. We on housing, we've been promised 1.5 million houses. Every time I and others challenge Angela Rayner, she insists they're going to build them. They know they're not going to build them. They're not going to build 1.5 million
You're
houses.
absolutely right. Look, I worked
in this parliament.
As you know, Graham, I worked as a special advisor in the housing department for a year and a half, and I know it is impossible for that to happen. We can actually just play that clip from George Madgwick now. Let's play the clip.
Right.
George, take me through what has happened to you in the last few days.
Absolute chaos, Peter. Absolute chaos. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, you explained the story really well. Everything you said is accurate and true. That the chief executive approached me at midnight on my personal number and encouraged me using language which I can only define as unacceptable to try and to keep me quiet from telling the members of the public about public information. I think that's the key point here. And this isn't the first time she had done this. She had tried to lobby me before to change my opinions on the Council of Sanctuary Pledge.
That is George Madgwick there, who is the Reform UK councillor. We've talked about that with Graham. We've talked about the aspects of free speech. I want to ask you, actually, Graham, about one other thing, which is the recognition of a Palestinian state. This is something that Keir Starmer seems to be under a lot of pressure about. 221 MPs saying that he should recognise a Palestinian state. Macron is saying that France will do it, the first major Western nation to do so. Clearly, we have a war, a very terrible war with a lot of humanitarian problems. 50 hostages still held by Hamas terrorists. We think 20 of them are alive. I just wonder what your position is on this and why.
Well, it seems a bizarre thing to me to be talking about recognition of Palestinian statehood. There's a clear humanitarian crisis in Gaza. There are obviously issues as well on the West Bank, all of which need serious consideration and effort. And it's a great shame that the Americans left Qatar, you've seen in the last week, because Hamas refuse to engage in ceasefire talks. So we need action.
It's hard to blame the Americans for that if Hamas won't engage.
I'm not blaming the Americans. I'm saying it's Hamas.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But that's where we come back to the statehood question. Recognising the Palestinian state, well, the part of any future Palestinian state that's in Gaza is controlled by murderous terrorists who are absolutely happy for their own people to be to die. The West Bank. There hasn't been an election there for 20 years. You've got Fatah and the Palestinian Authority there. Who exactly do the people who push for Palestinian statehood recognition think would be recognising? Would be recognising effectively terrorists and terrorists who currently hold either the bodies or the live hostages, 50 hostages. You're going to recognise them. What are people thinking? I don't get it. It seems entirely crazy to me to be talking about that. What we should be focused on is how we bring the authorities, such as they are, terrorists as they are in Gaza, to the table, so that the Israelis, who have understandable security concerns, can have those assuaged. It's just the most horrific situation. And it feels to me, as so often in these circumstances, Peter, I don't know why, people run off for some symbolic thing like this Palestinian statehood while ignoring the very real deaths that are happening this moment.
I'll tell you why, Graham, because Israel's always wrong. Israel can never do the right thing in these people's minds. Doesn't matter what they did. Israel could give everyone else in the world a free puppy and a massage, and they would still be wrong about absolutely everything, because that's how these people think. Graham, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you this morning. That was Graham Stewart, who's the Conservative MP for Beverley and Holderness. And just actually on that note, really interesting interview, a world exclusive actually in the Daily Mail today with Emily Damari, who was one of the hostages that Hamas terrorists were holding. The Mail says Hamas kept us in a cage like animals. Emily is the British citizen who spent 471 hellish days in captivity in Gaza. Here she pleads for the release of the remaining hostages and reveals how she was held with up to 5 other women in a tiny cage deep in the terrorist tunnels, and all the time she was in agony because of a medic who called himself Dr. Hamas botching surgery after her fingers were shot off on the 7th of October. Absolutely dreadful. There's a clip as well from Emily Damari, who's been speaking to the Mail. Let's play it now.
I saw that one cage, like very small cage, 5 girls sit in, in the cage. Every day you think they're gonna come and shoot you. I didn't want to be in that place. I prefer to die, you know. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, I am turning to you to do everything in your power to bring my Gali and Ziv home. The silence of the tunnels is so hard that sometimes you feel like you are already dead. You have the power to take them out of the silence. I just want them to hear the birds, again like I can, and not the deafening silence which destroys your soul. Please, Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister, you have the power. You saved my life. Now you must do the same for the last 50 hostages. Everyone must come home now. Only then can we all start to heal.
Emily Damari, their absolute hero, and calling for Hamas terrorists and indeed for President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu to do everything they can to get those 50 hostages back. We never forget them on this programme. We will make sure that we keep talking about those 50 hostages until they're back, and we will keep talking about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. There are many, many innocent people, men, women and children, who are starving and suffering. We want the war to end. We want Hamas to give back the hostages. We want there to be some form of diplomatic solution. It's a really, really tricky situation. Thank you to everybody who has been in touch. Leslie says, I wish Trump was here to help us sort this country out, not to play golf. Leslie, maybe you can do both. Anthony in Selby says, Peter, I'm raging with that Tory MP who shows why they're forever unelectable now. They lost control of the borders. They started the hotels and freebies for illegals. They introduced non-crime hate incidents. He shows how the Tories are still lying and Labour is still anti-British. Hi Peter, says this person, I could cry. Why haven't we had a leader like Trump? He is right on the migrants and spoiling the countryside with windmills. He may like Starmer. The citizens don't. Kieran Riley says, the Conservative MP, your party had 14 years to do something. You have did nothing. Vote Reform UK. Mark in Selby says, Trump has brutally called out the Emperor's new clothes, and one of the leaders he referred to is Starmer. The UK knows Trump speaks the truth. Starmer lies to our faces repeatedly over immigration. That will be one awkward meeting. We can only hope Starmer will switch on and get a grip. Well, what do you think that the leaders in this country need to wake up to the realities that Starmer is talking about? We'll find out what our debate desk members think. We've got Zach for the first time. Zach Wagman is joining us. He's a Conservative councillor from Stanmore. We also are speaking to Simon Donchik, the former Labour MP, will be with us after the break. Be sure to get your call in as well. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock. I'll take as many calls as I can, as I always do in every show that I do. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Of course, what happened in 1997 or thereabouts was Tony Blair said education, education, education. And some smart and ambitious police officers thought, we'll have a bit of this. And off they went to university to get their degrees. And they came back with their heads brainwashed with pseudo-intellectual Marxist claptrap. And so the police service we have today is unrecognisable from the policing of my era.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Paul in Fife. He says, morning, Peter. Why does the President of the United States, Trump, insist on praising Starmer? He must know that this guy is the polar opposite to what Trump believes in, yet he continues to publicly praise him. He sees what Starmer and Labour are doing to the UK, especially free speech, two-tier justice and uncontrolled borders. And Dan and Kent's been in touch and says, morning, Peter. It's a bit of a coincidence that letters have gone in to recognise a Palestinian state at the time of Starmer meeting Trump. I think Starmer is being set up by his party because if he doesn't talk to Trump about it, he will be gone. What do you think? I think you're absolutely right, Dan. Very little happens without some form of reason for it to happen. Everybody has an agenda in politics in this country and every other country as well. And certainly, look, you know, France is saying, Macron is saying that they're going to recognise a Palestinian state. I think that's foolish. I think I want a two-state solution. I don't want a one-state solution like Hamas, who want to destroy Israel. I want a two-state solution, but that's a process that's going to happen in a long time. And for the moment, the end has to be about ending the war. It has to be about getting the hostages back and making sure that the humanitarian situation is settled and sorted out, and that people in Gaza have some sort of attempt or some sort of opportunity of freedom, and that Israel can live in peace. That is what I want. I think recognising Palestine at the moment is a mistake. I actually think it's a reward to Hamas terrorists as well. We'll talk about that on the debate desk a little bit later on. Thank you to Margaret, who says, what another brilliant speech by Donald Trump. He can see we are being invaded. Why can't Starmer? He just hopes it will go away. It never will until Starmer gets a grip and stops the boats. That is what the British people want. Just do it, says Margaret in Birmingham. Let's just remind ourselves what Donald Trump has been saying about immigration. He has arrived in Scotland, playing a bit of golf today. It's a private visit, but he is going to meet Starmer tomorrow evening. This is what he's been saying on immigration.
I mean, there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. But you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, you know, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe. Many countries in Europe. Some people, some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe.
Immigration is killing Europe, says Donald Trump. Well, let's go to the debate desk now. I'm delighted to say that Simon Danchuk is with us, the former Labour MP. He was a Reform UK candidate, now a member of that party. Good to see you, Simon. You well?
Yeah, good to be here.
Great stuff. And Zach Wagman is with us for the first time. Zach is a Conservative councillor in Stanmore in London. Zach, great to have you here.
Good morning, Peter. Glad to be here.
A first time with us, although we've talked before. Of course, you were actually in Israel when the Iran attacks were happening. We'll talk maybe more about that a little bit later on. But on immigration specifically, Zach, does Donald Trump have a point? And what does it say, do you think, that it takes a president of the United States to come here to reflect back to the Prime Minister what many of our viewers and listeners think is true?
Of course, Donald Trump has a point. The level of migration coming to this country is obscenely high and uncontrollable at this stage. There's already been 21,000 people come across on boats just this year, and that's before you get to the legal migration, which is too high as well. But I think, as you say, it talks to a wider point that as soon as Trump landed, you saw he was standing in front of the aeroplane as he made those remarks. This is his perception of Europe. And we know that Trump has his passions and has the things he likes, but if that's the first thing that Americans are thinking of, and we know that he speaks for a lot of Americans, if the first thing they think of when they think of Europe is migration and the fact that our way of life, our culture, our safety is under threat and under attack, it speaks volumes, and it shows that the government, which has been asleep at the wheel and in my view has chosen not to do anything about this, needs to take action. And I think most of the British people agree with Trump, or at least on his broad point, that things have gone too far and we need to put a stop to this.
Yeah, well, I think many British politicians could learn from Trump, couldn't they, in terms of talking sense and talking straight talking. We want more of that in British politics, and we don't get it from any mainstream politicians except perhaps one or two Reform MPs, and let's be honest about that. But I'm curious to know, I mean, yeah, we want an end to illegal immigration, but you're a member of a Conservative party who flooded the country with illegal immigrants. How do you feel about that, Zach? How do you feel about the Conservative politicians who led all those people in?
You're absolutely right. Too many people came into this country, particularly after COVID and in the last few years, and that was under the Conservative government, and that wasn't acceptable. But I think definitely towards the end of that time, we saw the number of people coming down. So there was a significant reduction after they made a number of changes under Rishi Sunak to the threshold at which people were granted visas and the like. There was a significant reduction.
The public, the people listening to this just don't buy that. I mean, at one stage you had over 50,000 people, illegal immigrants, staying in hotels that British taxpayers were paying for, and this is the credibility problem that you and
Simon's right, isn't he, Zach? That's the problem. That's why one of the many reasons the Conservatives lost the election. Do you think? I mean, there's been a reshuffle this week. Got James Cleverly in as shadow deputy prime minister. Can the Conservatives turn this around in any way? Will people ever trust them again on immigration? Do you think?
I absolutely think so, because I think people can recognise that while there were definitely mistakes made, they had the intention.
It's the same people. It's the same people.
They had the intention.
With the exception of Rishi Sunak, the shadow cabinet that you've got is the people that were in charge when you were letting thousands of people into the country. People have had enough, certainly of Labour. Labour have been an absolute disaster, I agree with you on that. But a lot of this started under the Conservatives. You were in power for a very long time and you let thousands of illegal immigrants into the country, and you won't be forgiven for it.
Don't forget, on illegal immigration, which obviously the separate matter, on illegal immigration, they had a plan which was to send migrants to Rwanda. The numbers weren't going to be high, but it was no doubt going to be a deterrent, because there would have been people going through France, Germany, Switzerland that would have said, you know what, maybe I want to be in London, but I can settle in Zurich or Paris or whatever it is. And who stopped that? But the civil servants and the judges. So
I agree with you on that point. Yeah, totally. And it was a deterrent. I completely agree with it. And there's no deterrent now. And Starmer came in on the election last year in July saying he had a plan to stop the boats and he would take people out of hotels, neither of which after over a year now has he implemented. So I agree with you. No deterrent.
And no one believes Starmer. And you've seen clips of people in Calais waiting to come across saying, you know, we were pleased Starmer won. And so the intention was very much there, and they were stymied by the courts in the UK and in Europe. So I think that people could see that's what they wanted to do, you know, particularly under Rishi when Suella was the Home Secretary. They were really pushing for that. And on illegal immigration, if they'd been able to get that up and running, and they want to reenact a deterrent, whether it's Rwanda or something similar, and obviously Starmer now is talking about doing something very similar to that, recognising there's no deterrent, they can see the Conservative Party had the intention there.
Okay, we're going to take a couple of voice notes now. I want to hear this one from Ian on the Conservatives.
Hello, Peter. I can't understand why you're even giving this Tory MP, Graham Stewart, any airtime. The Tories had 14 years to deal with this problem, and all they did was let people in without any checks and balances, because they too, just like the Labour Party, hate the white British working class. This is Ian from Feltham.
Ian, thank you very much indeed for your message. We'll keep talking about migration. We'll reflect on a couple of the exclusives that Talk has brought you over the last 24 hours. Kevin's exclusive about the fish and chip shop owner, my exclusive about Portsmouth and what has been happening there with the asylum seeker accused of rape. I'm sure he denies that, and the fact that a local councillor was told not even to talk about it. We'll get reaction from Zach and from Simon after the break here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Stephen Millings has been in touch from Belfast and says, I'm in my 7th decade and I've never been more ashamed of our government. Everything from immigration, tax rises, budgetary controls, net zero, banning petrol cars, just so much they have got wrong. Takes a USA president to tell us how screwed up we actually are. Betty says, morning Peter, we need to start drilling first before you stop the windmills, otherwise you're just buying US oil and gas. Dawn in Chelmsford said, perhaps the truth about the illegal migrant crisis is that the government has no idea what to do. If they had used secure facilities instead of hotels, migrants would not be able to commit crime. Thank you to Jason in the Lake District, who says, what a treacherous, sorry mess our incompetent, weak leaders are with their dealings regarding Israel and the appalling failure to call out the terrorists Hamas, tied up because they're controlled by the Muslim vote. We'll talk more about that on the debate desk with Zach and with Simon in just a second, but I want to just continue talking about immigration, and James has been in touch with a voice note on migrant hotels. Let's hear what James has to say.
Hi Peter, James Tower Hamlets. What I'm concerned about, local MP saying refugees welcome here, 400 is going to turn up in an hotel. My mate's got two young daughters downstairs. They won't walk about on their own round here because they're not covered up head to toe to foot like a lot of them round here. So no good women walk on their own round here as it is in Tower Hamlets and the Isle of Dogs, you know. So what's going to happen there? Eh? And when's our voice going to be listened to? Oh, we're just worried. We're worried. We're concerned. That's it.
It's a very good point, James, and we're going to talk to Chris in Epsom. Just a reminder that we're here with Zach Wagman, who is a Conservative councillor for Stanmore in London, and the former Labour MP and Reform UK candidate Simon Danchuk are with me on the debate desk. Chris in Epsom has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Chris, you're very welcome to the programme this morning. What point would you like to make, not just to me, but to Simon and Zach as well?
Well, the chap that just spoke, I have great sympathy with him because in 2011, 2012, I had a beautiful penthouse on Commercial Road. just by Limehouse.
Okay, this is in East London, obviously. There are a lot of people who don't,
Yeah,
maybe not familiar with that
Tower
area. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had to give it up. I used to have to go to this underground station back then to collect my girlfriend. Something's happened with the audio.
Hello, Chris, you there?
I'm hearing my own voice back.
Oh, I can hear you clearly. Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I'm hearing my... Oh, that's better.
Much better now. Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I used to have to go to Limehouse and collect my girlfriend. It was that bad back then in 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
That's why I gave the place up.
Right.
But
It wasn't a safe area, and have things got worse since where you are in Epsom?
No, Epsom's a different story. There's quite a bit of immigration, but we've spoken about it before. Actually, I told you my road. My neighbours, because I moved home, took after my elderly parents. When they bought the house in 1971, the whole road was white English. Mm-hmm. Now I'm just actually going to get christening wrapping for my Portuguese neighbour. Opposite, I've got Bangladesh, Indian, Iraqi. To my left, I've got South African.
And do you get on okay with those people? Is that
all of us? Yeah, we go to each other's houses because it's been done gradually, and everybody's open-minded.
Yeah.
Not massive. They haven't bought. None of them have bought third world culture with them.
So it can work then, Chris, if people adopt British values, if they work hard and do the right thing.
Yes, of course it can. But that's not what's happening at the moment, Peter. Let's not get confused.
Yeah.
This is not what's happening.
Yeah.
What needs to happen now, right? You've got the proof in the statistics of what's going on in the country. We now need to build quickly detention centres and training centres.
Okay.
And we need to put, when somebody's being arrested for shoplifting or, God forbid, any more sexual attachment, they've got to go to a detention centre. They must not be allowed to walk around in our high trust society because it just isn't going to work.
Okay. Chris, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate them. That was Chris in Epsom there. Zach, we've heard from both James and Chris a lot of frustration about how in Chris's street immigration can work. People can come in, adopt British values, but there are so many times when it doesn't work. What's your impression of what James and what Chris have said?
James and particularly Chris are absolutely right that something needs to happen on this because, like you say, plenty of people that come to this country that have values or that are similar to ours or willing to buy into and share our values can settle in, they work hard, their children go to school and they contribute to the communities and the societies we're in. But there are too many people coming here that are not doing that. And exactly as Chris said, we need to be much harder on these people because we are led to believe that all these people, the 20-odd thousand people that have come over on boats this year are asylum seekers. They're not. We know that's not the case. But if we're led to believe that they are, if you are fleeing a war zone, I think we all sympathise with people that have come to this country in recent years from Ukraine, from Syria, from Afghanistan. If you've come from a war zone, you're not bothered about whether you stay in a nice hotel or you moved into a holding situation or you moved from here or there because you're desperate for safety and for peace. You're not going out and committing crimes because you and your family are looking for peace. It should be a clear sign to what Chris said. If you come here and you commit a crime, if you're like we're reading in the papers today, refusing to move around the country or go to a different hotel, you're not a real asylum seeker. You're a chancer and you're coming here to take advantage of the system and we need to come down hard on them.
The problem is as well, and I want to come to you in a second, Simon, is the fact that there are so many people abusing the system, working, for example, as delivery drivers. And what we're seeing is people who are working for the big companies like Uber Eats, like Deliveroo, absolutely no fines for them, as Kevin O'Sullivan, my colleague, exposed yesterday. But Kevin spoke to a fish and chip shop owner who did inadvertently, by mistake, employed someone who faked his papers, showed papers, said I'm here legally. He actually wasn't, and he got fined many thousands of pounds. Let's just remind ourselves of what Kevin broadcast last night here on Talk.
They've hit you, a small business owner, with a £40,000 fine. I believe because you've complained so much, they've reduced that to 28,000. But that's a hell of a fine for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's business changing. But I will just say one thing: the £28,000 was because I paid the fine within a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay. A bit like a parking fine, you mean? If you pay...
Yeah, if you pay it early, it's a reduced amount.
Right.
But I feel very strongly about this, especially with, as you've mentioned, what's going on with the big companies. There's always been a two-tier system in government. Again, the small businesses are, to me, the lifeblood of the economy. It's where it all starts. Small businesses thrive, and they're just killing us. They're absolutely killing us.
That's Mark Sullivan there, the fish and chip shop owner, speaking to Kevin O'Sullivan. Simon, what do you make of that? It just seems that these big companies are getting away with it, whereas the small business owners like Mark, who made a mistake, but he was shown papers to show that the person he employed was supposedly here legitimately. It's a farce.
It's a complete farce. And credit to the Sun newspaper, who really broke this story a couple of weeks ago in terms of spotting that many of the food delivery people were illegal immigrants. I mean, that's the reality of it. And it's almost as though the big corporations, Deliveroo and Just Eats, etc., it's almost as though they're exploiting that situation. And they get casually invited into the Home Office, I remember at the time, by the immigration minister to have a conversation about how they might stop it. Whereas you've got the small business owner here who's having the full the law thrown at him and having to pay big fines. I mean, it's a complete contradiction. It's outrageous, isn't it? This government just hasn't got an angle on how to tackle these issues, and it's infuriating the public. They need to get on top of it, but they're not going to do, because ultimately, and this is the top line in this story, I believe Starmer and his colleagues in Labour believe in open borders. They have an agenda to let people...
I mean, they would say they're smashing the gangs. They would say they've signed this one in, one out policy with France. Surely they are getting some sort of a grip on it, no?
Well, Robert Jenrick, Conservative Shadow Justice Minister, asked how many gangs they'd smash, how many people they've arrested in these gangs, and the Labour Minister couldn't even provide a number. So I don't think they've smashed any gangs at all, to be quite honest. And the record numbers of illegal immigrants coming into the country, more under Labour than ever before. There's no deterrent and there's no action against them coming into the country, and they're not deporting anywhere near enough. But credit to Farage, he's coming up with plans. He launched his law and order policies earlier this week. The idea of Nightingale prisons, excellent idea. Insisting on foreign criminals being deported. There's 10,400 foreign criminals in British prisons. Get them sent back to where they came from. It's not complicated.
I'm also really worried about freedom of speech, and one of the stories that I was concentrating on yesterday on Drive, I present Drive every Thursday and Friday between 4 and 7, and we know that in Portsmouth, for example, the council there was trying to suppress free speech of George Madgwick, who was one of the councillors who spoke to me yesterday. He made a formal complaint about the chief executive. Let's just remind ourselves what George said to me yesterday, and then we'll get reaction from Zach and Simon. George, take me through what has happened to you in the last few days.
Absolute chaos, Peter, absolute chaos. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, you explained the story really well. Everything you've said is accurate and true, that the chief executive approached me at midnight on my personal number and encouraged me, using language which I can only define as unacceptable, to try and to keep me quiet from telling the members of the public about public information. I think that's the key point here. And this isn't the first time she had done this. She had tried to lobby me before to change my opinions on the Council of Sanctuary Pledge.
Well, that was Councillor George Madgwick from Portsmouth Council. There was a peaceful protest there last night. Your reaction, Zach, to that story?
A councillor who is elected by residents, by voters, should never be told what they can and can't say by a civil servant, whether it's the chief executive of the council or anyone else. They've been elected and they should say what they want. And I can tell you, as a councillor, if I was texted by the chief executive, that'd be a strange thing anyway. But if I was texted by the chief executive at midnight telling me I can't say something, I'd be going and telling everyone that.
Exactly what George did. Reaction from Simon?
All credit to Councillor George Madgwick. He's right to speak out on this. It's outrageous that the chief executive is trying to instruct elected members in terms of what they should and shouldn't say. And the idea that the chief executive shouldn't be investigated is outrageous. They should certainly be investigated. complete overreach by a civil servant, a local civil servant who I suspect is paid a lot of money. I think they should really come down on her very strongly.
Well, a Portsmouth City Council spokesman said the council does not comment on any matters relating to individual members of staff. I did offer both the leader of the council and the chief executive to come on either yesterday, today, or indeed tomorrow. I'm on between 10 and 1. They're very, very welcome to do so. Plenty more to discuss. Starmer's problems, immigration. We're going to talk about Palestinian statehood as well. Zach is just back from Israel. We'll talk about that as well. We'll take some of your messages as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Plenty to discuss here on Talk, on the debate desk between now and 11, and indeed on the show in general between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us.
Of course, what happened in 1997 or thereabouts was Tony Blair said education, education, education. And some smart and ambitious police officers thought, we'll have a bit of this. And off they went to university to get their degrees. And they came back with their heads brainwashed with pseudo-intellectual Marxist claptrap. And so the police service we have today is unrecognisable from the policing of my era.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Matt in Grimsby's been in touch and says Starmer needs to call a national emergency ASAP on the illegal migrants and close the borders, let the Navy do their job. If he does that, he will surely win the next election. Hugh from Basingstoke says, why on earth do we have to rely on Donald Trump to speak out against illegals when our prime minister should be standing up in defence of Britain? Jane says, as I've always said, I think Trump pretends to like Starmer until he's had a state visit, then he'll turn on him. Leslie says, when France accepts refugees from Gaza, what's to stop potential Hamas supporters crossing the channel? And Gary says, simple question, how do you have a two-state solution when one of the states is run by Hamas, a death cult that exists for the sole purpose of destroying another state? Well, we're going to talk about this with Zach and Simon in a second. First of all, I just want to hear a voice note from Mark on this.
Morning, Peter. Mark in Lincolnshire. Yeah, we should start to recognise Palestine as a state. Hang on a minute. Actually, I can just see right now, pigs are actually flying in the sky around here. Friggin'. I mean, what an absolute joke. How do you recognise a state that doesn't even exist as a place? It just doesn't. You have Gaza in the West Bank. Wow, that's a state now, is it? I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful. I mean, I don't know why they don't just come out and just, like, declare crystal knacked at some point, you know, maybe, I don't know, maybe October or something, September. I think it was September, the original one, wasn't it? So they could do that on an anniversary, maybe. I mean, it couldn't be any more anti-Semitic without shouting, we're anti-Semitic, to be honest, in my opinion. Anyway, that's all I've got to say on that. Have a great show. Cheers, mate.
And Gary Fletcher in Scunthorpe says, regarding Palestine, as long as Palestinians have Hamas in power, I can't see Israel wanting to shake hands with the fear of allowing enough time for them to regroup and commit another atrocity, says Gary. Thank you for that. Let's speak again on the debate desk to Zach and Simon. Zach, you spent time in Israel recently. In fact, you were caught up in the Iranian attack. You couldn't come back. You spoke to us a couple of times about that. What do you make of this idea, 221 Labour MPs saying that we should follow France's example and recognise Palestine as a state?
It is absolutely morally, strategically and legally entirely misguided to recognise Palestinian statehood at this moment in time, and I'll quickly tell you why. On the moral front, this is Hamas. We'd be recognising a Hamas-run state while Hamas are taking aid and boasting about taking aid and food from desperate people, innocent people and families in Gaza that need the food, and we'll be rewarding them while they are making life a misery. It's strategically misguided because we say to terrorists like Hamas around the world, this is how you get what you want, because this is what Hamas wants, a state. You kidnap, rape and murder civilians in a neighbouring country, you keep those that you've kidnapped hostage for years, and then you torture by taking food, by taking life prospects away from the innocent people in your territory. That's how you get what you want, because that's what Hamas have done. And finally, one of the callers mentioned this, there's no legal basis for a Palestinian state. Statehood is defined nowadays under the 1933 Montevideo Convention, and the main thing about that is you need borders. Emmanuel Macron didn't mention where the borders are going to be. Borders are disputed on the West Bank, and the proposed Palestinian state isn't contiguous. You'd have Gaza and the West Bank separate. There is no legal basis for a Palestinian state, and so for the British government or the others being linked to it, like Germany, to recognise it would be morally, strategically and legally misguided.
What would you say, I know you're a supporter of Israel, Zach, what would you say to the many people who want to support Israel at the moment, who look at the humanitarian crisis there, who look at the aid that is not getting to the right people, who look at the starvation that is happening in Gaza? What would you say to them?
There is one group of people responsible for that, solely responsible for that, and that is Hamas. They started this conflict by invading Israel on the 7th of October and murdering, kidnapping and raping innocent people. They've now embedded themselves in civilian areas, meaning that the Israeli forces have had to go to civilian areas to stop the imminent threat to their existence, and now they're stealing aid and boasting about it, recording videos. Yahya Sinwar's wife, the leader of Hamas, who was murdered by the Israeli Defense Force, she's moved to Turkey and has been pictured with her designer handbags and designer jewellery. The leaders of Hamas are absolutely fine living elsewhere. Hamas
there's been footage of them looking very healthy, a bit too porky actually, eating plenty of food when so many people don't have it. Simon, a final thought on this?
Yeah, well, now is not the time, is it, to discuss what the solution is. Hamas started a war in October last year, and it's being concluded, and it's a very difficult situation out there. I've been out to the West Bank on a couple of occasions over the years, so I know the situation relatively well, but now is not the time to start discussing whether it's a one-state, two-state solution, and Hamas are a significant part of this problem, and until they're eradicated, in fact, I don't think you can come up with any solution at all.
How do we deal with the humanitarian crisis?
Oh, I think we have to be able to support those people, innocent people who are in Gaza, and get aid to them, and Israel has to cooperate with that, and I believe they will do. But
we know now that states are being allowed to parachute
yes,
aid
exactly.
in.
Yeah, and that's good news. But Hamas are the problem in all of this, and until they're dealt with, we're not going to have any solution at all.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed. That is Zach Wagman there, who's a Conservative councillor for Stanmore. Thanks indeed for joining us for the first time, not the last time, on the debate desk, and Simon Danchuk there, the former Labour MP and Reform UK candidate. Appreciate that. Thank you to Tad in Cambridge, who has sent me a message. He says, I'm enraged by the unfettered influx of illegal immigrants to the United Kingdom, and I hold the particularly bitter antithesis towards those, I think you mean antipathy, towards those who seek to enable it. There's a historical precedent. In 1940, the British Union of Fascists was forcibly disbanded for undermining the UK. Can't we do the same with groups like Care for Calais? It might also see the end of the Labour Party, says Tad. Well, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Another person says that guy is deluded who spoke earlier on. Tories will never get in again. They started the destruction of our country. Labour won't get in either. They are finishing the job. Lots more of your opinions coming up. We'll take your calls as well. We'll also speak to Robert Bates, who is the director of the Centre for Migration Control, about what's happening in Epping, about Trump's comments as well. Loads to discuss. I want to make sure that you get your voice on the air as well. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Plenty of time between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, oh, look. It catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. There's loads to discuss here on Talk, and we're talking about migration is the big issue. Donald Trump is in Scotland at the moment. He has been talking about it. He says that Starmer is someone who needs to get a grip, and Europe needs to get a grip on the migration problems. We'll be talking to Robert Bates in a second. He's the research director for the Centre for Migration Control. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Greg Wallace as well. He's on the front page of The Sun today saying that he is not a grouper, sex pest or flasher, and apparently John Trudeau is not a racist. We'll talk about that as well. We'll take your calls, 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Plenty to discuss here on Talk, and you can make sure that you get your call in. You can text me as well, 87222, with the word Talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell on Twitter as well. You can also send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Well, thank you to loads of people who've been in touch. Reaction as well to what Zach has been saying. I've been looking at Twitter there during the break, and Ian says what Zach was saying, the Conservative councillor who was with us just before the break on the debate desk. Zach, there is no reason for migrants to come here, specifically here, hotels, housing, tents. It doesn't matter. It isn't addressing the real issue. Another person called Dan, who says, I'm sick of hearing Conservatives talk about the state of immigration. They caused this mess. It should have been stamped out when it first started. If your contributor thinks they will be forgiven, think again. Not a chance. Dan's in Hampshire and says, please highlight to Zach that we certainly will not be forgiving them for what they did with immigration. They cannot turn this around. We're done, says Dan in Hampshire. I want to play a number of clips actually of what Donald Trump has been saying. We'll talk to Robert Bates in a second. Robert is the research director at the Centre for Migration Control, and Donald Trump has been on the runway. He's arrived in Scotland and he has had a very, very strong message for Keir Starmer and indeed for other leaders of Europe, including Macron. This is what the President of the United States has been saying.
I mean, there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. But you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, you know, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe, many countries in Europe. Some people, some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe.
Well, that was Donald Trump there. He is talking about all of this, and there's an awful lot going on as well. He had lots of thoughts on windmills as well. Let's see what he had to say about that.
Well, I say two things to Europe. Stop the windmills. You're ruining your countries. I really mean it. It's so sad. You fly over and you see these windmills all over the place, ruining your beautiful fields and valleys and killing your birds, and if they're stuck in the ocean, ruining your oceans. Stop the windmills.
So lots from Donald Trump there. Let's speak to Robert Bates. He is the research director of the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, there's so much around about migration at the moment. What do you think it says that Donald Trump has come to this country and has been so critical of Starmer and indeed Europe in general, associating migration problems essentially with us? What does it say that it takes the President of the United States to kind of reflect that back to our own political leaders who really can't see what's happening every single day in this country?
Well, it's the new world, isn't it? Stepping forward for the liberation and rescue of the old. I think we've got an objective outsider here who has been looking at the numbers, no doubt being briefed on the crisis that's taking place in the English Channel and on the Mediterranean with Europe as a whole. And he's looking at what he's doing over in the United States, where those crossings on the southern border are at record lows. I think it was only about 6,000 that came across in the last month. His approach is clearly something that is working. And he's looking at what people in Europe, looking at leaders in Europe who are tying themselves in knots over human rights legislation, getting caught down avenues, dead ends to do with international collaboration, and not doing anything to address those pull factors, which are actually the key reason why we are seeing such huge numbers of individuals breaking into our country. The fact that Britain, for instance, is spending billions of pounds on accommodation. We're now buying up or planning to buy up houses and encourage councils to buy up abandoned houses for individuals newly broken into the country rather than our own homeless. And I think anyone with a spectre of common sense that's perhaps a bit of a step away from the situation would look at this and think, hang on, who is this actually benefiting? It's clearly not benefiting the people of Europe. It's clearly not benefiting the people of Britain. Why are political leaders going down this route, which is so clearly against the national interest? And I'm very grateful for these comments. I think Vance has clearly made similar comments previously as well. But unfortunately, our politicians in Europe, in Britain, are so beholden to and a sort of established approach to migration, which is primarily to do with the human rights of those entering illegally, that I really doubt that they will actually heed these words. And I really doubt that for the next 4 years, at least, until we perhaps see another government take power in 29, we'll see anything decisive take place on this issue.
No, certainly there's an awful lot that is going on here. We've seen peaceful protests last night in Epping and local councillors there saying that they want the Bell Hotel there and another hotel to be closed. They are seeing the clear action and indeed the sentiments of local people, many of whom, not all of whom, but most of whom are making their voice heard very, very peacefully and simply talking about the problems in their community. I'm really worried about a number of different aspects. We're going to talk about free speech, we're going to talk about fines as well in a second, but specifically in regard to Epping, what do you think is going on there and what do you think should happen, Robert?
Well, I think you look now, we've had the MP come out and say the hotel needs to be closed. We've had the council now vote that the hotel should be closed. The Police and Crime Commissioner said it's not an appropriate thing to be placed on that community either. And I think we need to realise that actually, as a broader issue, the asylum hotel policy is one that's fundamentally failed. It's been conducted without any democratic consent. Many local politicians just simply aren't told that they'll suddenly have their community inundated with dozens of young men about whom we know absolutely nothing. So I think the concerns of those individuals in Epping are incredibly legitimate. I think far too many in the media are keen to present it as if those worst fringes, those tiny number of individuals that are there primarily to cause trouble, most of them seem to be sort of TikTokers looking for content more than anything else as well, are actually the defining individuals, are indicative of the individuals involved in these protests. It's not. It's mothers, it's fathers who have seen their community transformed overnight. They've had a sense of dread sort of descend upon the streets of where their children walk. And we have, of course, alleged sexual assaults as well. And if we're in a situation where parents can't speak out against changes to their community and the risks that they think their children are being exposed to, then I think we're going down a very dark path. I think this situation could have been completely avoided if the previous Conservative government, when this issue first exploded, had taken a far different approach to housing these individuals that have come in illegally, and rather than scattering them around the country, 15 billion we're going to be seeing spent on these hotels and accommodation by the end of the decade. It actually decided to invest that in detention facilities. I think that's where the issue really started to explode. It was a decision taken several years ago now that we're still having to unfortunately endure the consequences of.
Yes, and free speech is a very, very clear issue, a big issue. And actually I spoke yesterday to George Madgwick, who is a Reform UK councillor in Portsmouth, and Portsmouth City Council have been criticised by him, quite rightly I think, their Chief Executive Natalie Brahma-Pearl, who, I repeat the offer, she's very welcome to come on this programme if she wants to explain her position as to why at midnight she sent George Madgwick a message after an asylum seeker had been charged with a sexual offence, telling him not to talk about it because of what she said apparently was a community cohesion. Now, Portsmouth City Council spokesman said the council does not comment on any matters relating to individual members of staff. I spoke to George about this yesterday. This is what he said. I'll get your reaction in a second, Robert. George, take me through what has happened to you in the last few days.
Absolute chaos, Peter. Absolute chaos. So, yeah, I mean, as I say, you explained the story really well. Everything you said is accurate and true. That the chief executive approached me at midnight on my personal number and encouraged me using language which I can only define as unacceptable to try and to keep me quiet from telling the members of the public about public information. I think that's the key point here. And this isn't the first time she had done this. She had tried to lobby me before to change my opinions on the Councillor Sanctuary Pledge.
Well, that is George Madgwick there who spoke to me. Robert, what's your reaction to this situation?
First of all, who the heck is this chief executive to be telling an elected representative what he should and should not be doing to stand up for the well-being of his constituents?
Correct.
Second of all, we've got ourselves into a situation where the sort of the blob, as it were, for lack of a better word, is so obsessed with this idea of community cohesion and this idea of not having anything bubble up, even though many of the tensions are a result of decisions taken by political figures and those in Whitehall and in local councils. And they are effectively looking to sort of stymie any criticism of, very legitimate criticism of, mistakes that these people have made. And they're using this notion of community cohesion and, it's a very patronising phrase as well, because what it suggests is that actually if people were to know this information, then things would flare up, whereas actually what we've seen again in Epping with the large majority of those people protesting is that people are able to conduct themselves very responsibly.
And in Portsmouth last night, there was exactly what you're saying, Robert. There was in Portsmouth last night, there was a protest, totally peaceful, no arrests as far as I've heard anyway, and actually people were able to take this information, process it, say that shouldn't happen and this is a very concerning thing. Of course the person who is accused of those crimes, I'm sure, protests his innocence, and I don't want to jeopardise a trial, and Robert's not doing that either, and neither is George Madgwick, but my point is that people have a right to know this information. Another thing that Talk has been exposing over the past 24 hours, Kevin O'Sullivan, my colleague, was talking to a fish and chip shop owner as well, who was fined £28,000 for inadvertently, by mistake, employing someone who is here illegally. That person showed him their papers, and they were apparently legitimate papers, but they weren't, of course, they were fakes. And we're in a situation where that fish and chip shop owner fined £28,000, a business-changing amount of money, as he said to Kevin. Let's see this clip and then talk to Robert about it in just a second.
They've hit you, a small business owner, with a £40,000 fine. I believe because you've complained so much, they've reduced that to £28,000. But that's a hell of a fine for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's business changing. But I will just say one thing: the £28,000 was because I paid the fine within a certain amount of time.
Oh, okay. A bit like a parking fine, you mean? If you pay...
if you pay it early, it's a reduced amount.
Right.
But I feel very strongly about this, especially with, as you've mentioned, what's going on with the big companies. There's always been a two-tier system in government. Against the small businesses are, to me, the lifeblood of the economy. It's where it all starts. Small businesses thrive, and they're just killing us. They're absolutely killing us.
Mark Sullivan on there from Big Fry Fish and Chip Shop in Egham, and Matt, who's our tech op, has been telling us today that he has been there, and he says it's an excellent fish and chip shop. Can you please, if you're in the Egham area, nip in, get yourself a fish supper, support Mark. He's been through absolute hell with this. And what Kevin was talking about was the fact that Uber Eats, Deliveroo, Just Eat, all these big companies haven't had a single fine as a result of this. Instead, the government and the authorities picking on the little guy, people like Mark, who made a mistake and have been fined £28,000 as a result, Robert.
Yeah, so first of all, I hope that individual that was actually working illegally, if the Home Office now knows that he was in the country illegally, I hope proper process has been taken, that individual is on his way out of the country, because I think unfortunately what we have happened far too often is the Home Office will drop fines on those companies that maybe have inadvertently employed someone who's here illegally. I mean, again, not enough support is actually extended to those small businesses looking to employ people. I think the check system on right to work could be a lot stronger and a lot more thorough. But I think we need to recognise that actually the reason why this mistake has taken place, or this has happened for this chip shop, is because we have so many people in the country illegally in the first place, and that is the direct fault of Whitehall and the inability to conduct proper exit checks, the inability to actually know who is in this country illegally. And the system has got so out of control that the whole population, we don't really know who's here with legitimate right to work. We don't know the true numbers. And it is the little guy that seems to get beaten by this. And as you say, Deliveroo, those other delivery companies have been effectively almost knowing that what is happening in there with their systems, with these kind of subsidising and replacing individual accounts with those that are living in hotels, and have done very, very little thus far to actually clamp down on that. Obviously, the government has announced some plans now to share data with these companies that will perhaps allow them to clamp down on it a bit more. But again, it seems to be the little guy that doesn't have the power to fight back that absolutely gets pummeled. And I think many people are sick of it at this point.
Thank you, Robert. Very much appreciate all of what you're saying there. That's Robert Bates there, who is the director of the Centre for Migration Control, the research director of the Centre for Migration Control. Let's hear from you. Paddy has been in touch with Starmer and immigration.
Good morning, Peter. Loving the show. A couple of very quick points. One is that the difference between Trump and Starmer is that Trump loves his country and Starmer loves Davos. And on the numbers of immigrants. I believe that in 2018, Priti Patel increased the allowance of low-paid immigrants from 20,000 a year to 200,000 a year. That was the Tories for us. Anyway, thank you, Patty from Coulston.
Paddy, thank you. Just a very friendly reminder. I really enjoyed your message. You made some very good points there, but just a friendly reminder. I love the sound of my own voice, but if you just mute me when you're recording your voice note, because I heard myself in the background. We just have a few viewers and listeners who don't have 100% brilliant hearing, and if there are other noises or music or whatever, that can distract them. So we do get complaints about that. So Paddy, thanks so much for your voice message. But just a reminder to everybody to please, you know, not that I would encourage you to do this usually, but when you're recording your voice note, just turn down the radio or the telly just when you're doing that. Rob has been in touch about the Conservatives.
Hello, Peter. Great show as always, mate. Robin Stalberger. Peter, you've got the councillor on from the Conservative Party. Who does he think he's kidding? We're never going to vote Conservative again. Mate, for 14 years, you destroyed the country. You day listen. And so you think that lying to us is going to get us to vote for you again? You're finished, mate. You're finished. Conservatives of the party are finished. Reform are going to change this country, and they're going to do things that the Conservatives could only wish of. Cheers, Pete. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks for your thoughts there. Kieran Riley's been in touch again. He says, well done, Donald. Great that someone is speaking up for us. Shame it is not our leaders saying it. John in London says, President Trump said immigration is killing Britain and Europe. He is so right. I wish he was our leader. Another person says, only immigrants who have a job and can support themselves without benefits. Starmer, when a lawyer insured migrant benefits. Thank you to Phil, who says people lending out their accounts to illegals should be heavily fined along with the companies letting them do it. Talking about those delivery firms as well. Sometimes it's happened to me. I've reported it. People, you know, get food delivered. I don't get food delivered that often, but sometimes get delivered, and you know, it says, you know, this person is coming to deliver your food, and then it turns out to be someone else, maybe even someone of the opposite sex as well. Gaz says, how do we know it doesn't stop at food delivery? How often have you checked the ID of private hire taxis? That's a good point as well. Actually, speaking of that, I was in a great black cab. I'm a big fan of black cabs, although they are a little bit on the pricey side. And Steve gave me a lift home last Saturday, and it was Sunday, sorry. It was really, really good to talk to him, and he was a really interesting guy as well. So thank you to our black cab drivers here in London, who do an excellent job. Brad in Cambridge says, I'm an ex-member of the Conservative Party and now a member of Reform. Personally, I will never trust the Conservatives again. Labour are killing this country off, but the Tories started the rot, says Brad in Cambridge. Plenty more to discuss with you. We'll take some calls in just a second here on Talk.
Over the years,
that what has been revealed about Corbyn and his kind, and it's at this point, it's kind of sad. I mean, I almost feel like someone needs to just put their arm around him and say, Jeremy, it's, you know, it's done. It is so over. And I think this, I mean, I've been a few Tory people that I speak to, you know, oh, this can be quite helpful in, you know, splitting the Labour Party.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you so much to David, who says, I understand about... Oh, no, that was... I'm not quite sure what's come up on the screen. Hi, Peter. Why do British politicians hate us, says Nick. They live in their ivory towers and are laughing at us. I can't think of one thing to look forward to. Living in this country I was born in, I'm only glad that in 57 years I've never voted. Therefore, it's not my fault. Nick, you got to vote. Come on, it's your duty as a citizen. There's got to be someone who speaks to you, who has some form, who resonates with you, something that you want to vote for, or even if you go in, as some people do, and cross it out and say none of the above. I think there should be a none of the above box on, but I also think that people should vote. It's really important. People died for a right to vote, and I think if you don't vote, maybe you shouldn't complain. Maybe that's a slightly harsh thing to say, Nick. Maybe you disagree with me. That's okay. We disagree on this programme without being disagreeable. 0344 499 1000. Thank you to Alison and Billericay, who says, I think what your previous voice note said about Graham Stewart, the MP, was a bit mean. He wasn't in charge, and the fact he kept his seat presumably means he's a good local MP. He also asked an excellent question in Prime Minister's Questions a couple of weeks ago and told Starmer about all of his failures, which I was very impressed by, says Alison. Listen, I've known Graham Stewart for 15 years. I think he's a good MP. I think he represents his constituents well. You know, did the Conservatives make a huge heap of mistakes? Yes, absolutely. I was a special advisor for 3.5 years. I'm sure I played my part in some of those mistakes. For example, not building enough prisons, although I'm not sure how many we could have built in 6 months. But anyway, that I was at the Ministry of Justice. But Alison, I think that's maybe a fair point. But listen, people are entitled to their opinions. You think I'm talking nonsense? You think I'm talking rubbish? You give me a ring. You tell me why. 0344 499 1000, because we disagree without being disagreeable. Charles is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Charles, you're very welcome to the programme. What is your point this morning?
Oh, thank you very much. And I'm inspired by the comment from the fish and chip man.
Yeah, Mark, yeah.
Taken to task over the employment of an illegal. I was a driving instructor for 26 years from 1988 on, and there was a point at which we were asked to check out the status of someone, whether they could have the driving licence or not. And you would have thought, I mean, I don't know how many old gits like me are still about listening as driving instructors. That some of that it was something that we, you know, generally talking to people in the casts and bits and pieces as we did, said we didn't really want to do it.
Well, why should you? I mean, someone shouldn't have a driving licence. Yeah. Surely that's the authorities' the authorities' responsibility, and also for you as a driving instructor. I mean, you've enough things to worry about. If someone says, "Here is my driving licence," here is you will accept that as legitimate, and you'll teach them to drive, and it shouldn't be your responsibility. It's the authorities trying to get you to do the job for them.
That's exactly right, and it also there was ripple effects that was happening to examiners themselves. They were being put through the mill as we were. I mean, I could tell you if you got the Times that to hear about what they was doing to the examiners.
Well, tell me now. I'm interested. Charles.
The regime change. One of the guys I spoke to. It was a good few years back, and he was telling me, I won't give his name because
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
He explained to me, because I said, well, how comes I remember you, sort of thing. We met, what happened? And he told me that he was out to go a driving test one day, take someone out, and he did motorcycle as well. And so he got a phone call, and they called him by surname, and he went to the phone, And then he said, right, this is the way you're going to conduct driving tests in the future, blah, blah. And he started to, for sure, on the phone, he started to sort of spout about what he wanted to do. He stopped him. He said, how many driving motorcycle tests have you conducted? And he went, no, none, and then carried on spouting.
Right.
In the end of the day, he come back to him and said, how many, in any tests have you conducted?
Yeah.
And he said, no, none. He put the phone down. What happened, he found himself on a course with other examiners, and the course title was, get this, it was from dinosaurs to dolphins. In other words, you're a dinosaur, now you're going to swim like a dolphin.
Oh, my goodness. What a load of old nonsense. My goodness.
But, I'd always encourage, like, people that have been through different trades and things like myself to actually tell you what we've experienced.
Yeah, exactly.
When we're gone, there's no one to tell us.
Well, you're absolutely right, Charles, and that makes perfect sense. What is it like being a driving instructor? Because I always think there must be something weird psychologically in it where you're like, I'm teaching you, and the whole point of this relationship is that you can never speak to me again. You can get through your driving test and then never contact me again. It must be kind of weird.
Yeah, it is. I was asked, I think 3 times, 2 or 3 times I got letters to say, do I want to sort of do it? But it's a different thing. And we examine in our training, we examine as well.
Okay.
I don't know if you think back to when you was taught, if you do.
Yeah.
But, if you've got a decent driving instructor,
Yep.
teach you all of the basics, get you on, and then you've got to drive independently.
Yes.
And standards have changed. Well, there's bloody helicopter coming. Standards have changed, I believe, drops. I'll get out of the way of the helicopter. And so lots of changes has happened, but I'd encourage people from my industry, because I know about it still, don't do it anymore, but other industries which changed dramatically. I've got friends that were on the gas board, electricity board, all the old established things that were they were like the bedrocks of England.
Oh, you're totally right. Charles, I had a really good driving instructor. His name is Jim, and he was the most laid-back person I've ever met in my entire life. In fact, he used to put the seat the whole way back, like he was almost lying back. And my dad, who was teaching me, basically for the first month or so, had one hand on the handbrake and one hand on the car door, so he could either stop the car or just sort of get out of it because he was so worried. But I passed my driving test first time, and honestly, I was 17 at the time, doing loads of exams as 17-year-olds often do at that stage, and passing my driving test was the most amazing thing. And I had a great driving instructor, Jim, who did a fantastic job. So.
He sounds great. Jim, who was always lying down, and now we've got a Prime Minister who's always lying.
Charles, very good. Seamless segue there. You've got a future in broadcasting. Mary is in Hemel Hempstead and wants to talk about the Middle East. Mary, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's not a Palestinian state they want, it's a Hamas state. Now, how can you have a terrorist organisation being legalised as owning a country when it's not legitimate?
Yeah, well, that's it. And also it would be 2 separate pieces of land as well. There would be Gaza and there would be the West Bank, which is disputed by itself. A lot of people as well say this would be a reward to Hamas for their terrorism campaign for many years, but particularly since the 7th of October. What do you make of that side of things, Mary?
I quite agree. And why is the United Nations not allowing the Israelis to deliver the aid?
Yeah, well, that's a part of it as well. And why aren't they all working together to get the aid there? It's a very good point, Mary.
They've got the truck sitting there with all the stuff, and they won't allow them to give it. And yet the Israelis are being blamed because there's a humanitarian crisis.
Well, as we know, Mary, Israel, as far as these people are concerned, Israel's always wrong. They can never do anything right. It's impossible.
We never hear anything about the hostages.
Yeah.
Why don't Hamas just give up the hostages?
Very good point. And well, another thing we never hear about is Egypt, and they have a land border with Gaza as well. We never hear about them. Well, you hear about the hostages in this programme. In fact, Emily Damari has been talking, one of the really incredibly brave people who continues to speak out, I should say, about what the hostages are doing. We're just going to hear a little clip from her astonishing interview in the Daily Mail today. Hamas kept us in cages like animals. She's the British citizen who spent 471 hellish days in captivity in Gaza Gaza. Here in the Mail, she pleads for the release of the remaining hostages and reveals how she was held with up to 5 other women in a tiny cage deep in the terrorist tunnels, and all the time she was in agony because a medic who called himself Dr. Hamas botched surgery after her fingers were shot off on the 7th of October. She's an incredibly inspirational woman, now released, of course, from captivity from Hamas terrorists. There are 50 people still being held by them. We think about 20 of them are alive, but we're not entirely sure. This is what Emily Damari has been saying.
I saw that one cage, like very small cage, 5 girls sit in the cage. Every day you think they're gonna come and shoot you. I didn't want to be in that place. Like, I prefer to die, you know. President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, I am turning to you to do everything in your power to bring my Gali and Ziv home. The silence of the tunnels is so hard that sometimes you feel like you are already dead. You have the power to take them out of the silence. I just want them to hear the birds, again, like I can, and not the deafening silence which destroys your soul. Please, Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister, you have the power. You saved my life. Now we must do the same for the last 50 hostages. Everyone must come home now. Only then can we all start to heal.
Everyone must come home now, and only then can we start again. Emily Damari is an incredibly brave person. Mary, I'm sure you agree.
Very, very sad. Shocking to hear this.
Yeah, absolutely. Mary, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. That's Mary in Hemel Hempstead there. Lots more to discuss. We're going to be talking about the doctor strike next. 50,000 medics joining that 5-day walkout. Why aren't they satisfied with the 22% pay rise? Why do they want 29.2% more? We'll speak to a GP who has some thoughts on the matter. Nick Mann will be with us in just a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Julie Hartley-Brewer, of course, is back on Monday at 10 o'clock. She's back from her well-deserved holiday, and she will be on this station. Lots to discuss. Trevor has been contacting me from Harrow, and he says, Peter, I am never going back to Labour or the Tories. They're two cheeks of the same bottom. You remind me of George Galloway, who said that the Lib Dems, Labour and Conservatives are three cheeks of the same bottom. Stephen Millings in Belfast says, in 2008 there was a worldwide economic crash. Can you name the private sector jobs that have had a pay restoration from 17 years ago? No, me neither. Very good point, Stephen. Speaking of the economy and public services and taxation, big issue, of course, with the doctors' strike. 50,000 medics are striking at the moment. Junior doctors are striking. They got a 22% pay rise. That happened, of course, about a year ago. That was one of the first things the new Labour government did. Now they're asking for another 29.2%. Nick Mann, Dr. Nick Mann, is a GP, has some thoughts on this. Nick, where do your sympathies lie with all of this?
Hello, Peter.
Hi there.
My sympathies are with the junior doctors, the resident doctors, and it's a shame that it's being wielded as a political weapon rather than addressing the commitment which was understood when the 22% over 2 years was organised with the Labour and Wes Streeting. You know, they sound like big numbers, 29% increase, but that could be phased to get pay restoration, and it is restoration, not an increase since 2008.
But how many people have got that level of an increase is my question, and of course the public are paying for this, and they see people who've got a 22% increase and think, hold on a second here, I haven't got that either.
Well, across all sectors, private and public, since 2008, there's been an increase of 1.2%, and that's across all sectors. At that same time point, doctors have had a 20 to 24, resident doctors have had a 20 to 24% fall. So you look at the it's got to be a comparison of what's happened in the rest of the sector. I mean, business and financial services have increased by 6.6% since that time. So a 6.6% increase compared to a 24% decrease for resident doctors is massive. It's across, you know, compared to any other sector, any other
How many doctors
occupation.
are there, Nick, who have actually been in employment since 2008? Surely there will be many thousands of these people, of these doctors who are striking. There will be many thousands of them who weren't in post in 2008. They knew when they signed up to be a junior doctor what the salary was, and if you came into the profession, let's say 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you may well be in a position where you've got to rise to a salary that you were never paid, a parity to a salary that you were never paid previously, and I don't see those people refusing those pay rises.
Well, I think there are two issues. One is about pay and one is about conditions. I mean, when I signed up in 1990 as a doctor, I certainly didn't expect to find thousands of people on a daily basis as patients being cared for in corridors, and 14,000 people a year dying simply because of the lack of emergency provision in hospitals. And this is something that the government is squarely responsible for. And in terms of the pay, I mean, again, I say it's got to be taken in comparison. It's got to be taken in comparison.
But you haven't answered my point, Nick. You haven't answered my point in terms of the fact that people who've joined up since 2008 knew what the salary was. If you've arrived in the last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you were never paid that amount that you're asking for the restoration to, and that's not fair.
Well, they knew what they signed up to in 2008, but the degradation in pay has been 25%.
Four people, Nick, four people who were there, four junior doctors who were there in 2008. If you became a junior doctor in, let's say, 2022, you are asking for restoration to pay that you never received, and you knew what the pay was when you signed up. And the public, who are taxed at the highest level from as a proportion of what the country makes since the Second World War, are being asked to pay more money to people who are already well paid already in comparative terms to most people in this country.
Well, I think, again, I would ask you to look at comparative terms. You know, a doctor's assistant 2 to 3 years ago was earning 60% more than a doctor. So doctors, resident doctors, were earning £14 an hour, while the
resident doctors do not earn
20...
£14 an hour. That is not true. Some of them do, Nick. Some of them earn £14 an hour at the start of their career, at a career which has a trajectory, which means that you're going to earn a lot more than £14 an hour as you go on. Most jobs don't have the same progression and increase in pay as doctors do. Some people earn £14 an hour. Many people in their first jobs, and indeed the jobs they have done for many years, earn a lot less than that. And that argument is a spurious one.
I don't think it is spurious. In 2022 to 23, doctors' pay was 14. Resident doctors' pay for the first couple of years was £14 an hour. And it's gone up to £17 an hour, and it should be going up to £18 an hour.
Loads of people would love to earn that amount of money. The average salary in this country is £36,000 a year. There are lots of people who would say that is a fair wage.
Well, £36,000 an hour is lower than the average salary.
The average salary in this country is £36,000 a year.
Yeah, so I beg your pardon. So doctors are earning basically the average salary.
What's wrong with that?
Well, I think when you've studied for 5 years, you're doing, training over 2 years, 3 years, 5 years.
So you earn the average salary in your first job. Yep. You earn the average salary in your first job, and then it goes up. That's fine. Loads of people in their first job don't earn, huge salaries. £36,000 a year is a very respectable salary. I go back to the point which you haven't addressed, Nick, which is if you're earning that amount of money in the last few years, you've signed up for a salary, you know what it is, now you're complaining about it.
What you signed up for in 2008 isn't what you signed up for in 2025. I'm sorry.
The point I've made a number of times now, Nick, and you fail to engage with, is the fact that many, many thousands of people who are on strike weren't even working in 2008. Some of them were in school in 2008. Some of them have signed up in the last sort of 15 years or so, and they knew what the salary was, and they're asking for restoration to something which happened way before they even became junior doctors.
Well, I think looking at the bigger picture, you're losing 20 to 30,000 doctors every year now prematurely. Because of pay and conditions. You're looking at doctors who are working in appalling conditions, looking after patients in corridors. You're looking at a government who is not really addressing those issues. So pay is an issue.
Okay, pay is an issue, but Nick, again, I've asked you about 4 times now, and you're just absolutely not engaging with that point. Why would paying doctors more money mean that patients wouldn't have to be in corridors? In fact, you'd be taking money away from the government's attempts or the NHS's attempts to get people out of corridors, because you'd be paying doctors more money.
Well, the NHS is losing about $2 billion a year through losing doctors that are being educated and trained at a high cost. So actually,
I think surely that is incredibly unfair, and the junior doctors themselves are taking heavily subsidised courses. Yes, they're paying money for them and they've got student debt, but they're taking heavily subsidised courses, and then they're not even giving 10 years, 5 years to the NHS. That is, I would say, very sharp practice, very underhand if you're taking a heavily subsidised course and then you're going away to Australia and New Zealand. So they're not helping their case there, and they're not helping the public sympathy for them.
Well, the student debt is paid back, so heavily subsidised it may be, but it's being paid back.
Well, it's not being paid back. What is being paid back are the tuition fees of £9,000 a year. To train a doctor costs a heck of a lot more than £9,000 a year, Nick, and you know that.
Yeah, it costs about $250,000, which is why when we lose doctors, we're losing to about $2 billion.
Well, surely a solution. Surely a solution to that, Nick, would be to say, right, as part of this deal, what we are going to do is to say, if you sign up for, like people do with the military, for example, like people do in other ways when some of their education is paid for, if you're saying, right, we're going to heavily subsidise your course for 6 years, we're going to train you up to become a doctor, where on day one you're basically going to earn the average wage, and then you're going to earn a lot more as time goes on. You've got to stay in the NHS for 10 years. Surely that would be a perfectly reasonable thing for the government to do.
I think it's kind of indicative that doctors, and I object to the idea that it's shop practice and taking advantage. Doctors are leaving because they can't tolerate the conditions, and the pay doesn't kind of help. And I think both of those issues are very much in keeping with the reason that the resident doctors are striking. And
so,
it's now,
your
nurses,
view, Nick,
paramedics.
Okay. So your view, Nick, is that we should heavily subsidise their courses, we should say you pay £9,000 a year, we'll pay a heck of a lot more. You'll have student debt of, let's say, £50,000, £60,000, but in terms of actually the amount of money it takes, let's say £9,000 over 6 years, £9,000 a year for 6 years, £54,000 a year. But then at that exact point, if you say, do you know what, I don't want to become a junior doctor, I am going to pay back the £54,000, but I'm going to sneak off to Australia to earn more money, that we should have to just suck up the £200,000 difference between what we as the taxpayer have paid for that doctor to be trained. I think that is sharp practice. I think it's very, very fair to say that that's sharp practice.
Well, I don't agree that that's how doctors operate in the NHS. You know, you become a doctor because you want to look after patients.
Well, not of these 50,000 people who are saying, well, I'm not going to look after patients for the next 4 days because they can just deal with it because I'm not being paid enough, even though you knew exactly what you're going to be paid when you started training to be a doctor.
I think if you work in the corridors, if you work at the sharp end of A&E, you very much know that the reason doctors are leaving is because pay and conditions have become intolerable, not because we're laughing it off and deciding we want to go to sunnier climes. That just isn't realistic, and it's just not a kind of realistic way to look at
how will pay make it better? I still don't know, Nick. Okay, I still don't know how pay will make it better. I still don't know why taking money away from other parts of the NHS, and we've given money hand over fist to the NHS. They have had a huge increase. It's now £200 billion a year for NHS England. There is no other part of the public sector that has had such a big increase in that. If you give more money to the doctors, which is going to come from taxpayers, it's going to come from the people watching and listening to this programme, many of whom are struggling, to well-paid people who knew what they were going to be paid when they became junior doctors. How will giving them more money and taking money away from other parts of the NHS budget make conditions better, Nick?
We are scrabbling to keep up with the OECD average for GDP funding. So it's not as if, you know, the NHS is kind of giving money hand over fist.
Well, it is. I mean, when the Conservatives came, a factual point is when the Conservatives came into power in 2010, the NHS England had £139 billion a year. That was 14 years ago. Now we're in a situation where the NHS England gets £200 billion a year. Can you name one other public service that has got another £61 billion a year?
Well, looking at that time point, you're completely ignoring the fact that the government has allowed the least number of beds, doctors, CTs, MRI scanners, and GDP funding per capita to persist over 15 years. And that is what has substantially degraded the health service and the patients working in it. And, you know, we're all patients. It's not, the health service isn't a kind of something you do because you want to. It's something we have to do, and we have to fund it and create the conditions for it where both doctors and patients can survive and thrive, and that is not happening. And you know, the political angle, you know, West Streeting did make some inroads and did appear to be listening, but also I think for him at that time it was a political easy win, and now he's not so bothered. But it is still a live issue. Pay restoration is an issue, and all the other conditions that doctors have had degradations and suffered significant detriment. I mean, in working conditions, you know, it's not a joke. These are very real, and these are the real reasons why doctors are leaving. And until that's properly addressed, things will continue like that, and patients are the ones who end up suffering. Not 5 days of strikes, but the 80,000 operations a year being cancelled for non-clinical reasons, the 14,000 patients dying every year through lack of emergency care. You know, these are the real things, not the political wins.
Okay, Nick, thank you. That's Dr. Nick Mann, who's a GP, talking about the junior doctors' strike there. Lots of reaction coming in. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets, voice notes, smoke signals, telepathic messages, however you want to get in touch with us. Let us know your thoughts, 0344 499 1000.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
As something you can indulge in, as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Pete's been in touch and says doctors are leaving because they are greedy. Tanya says, well done on your interview with Nick. His justifications are a disgrace. Why should junior doctors be more superior over any other profession where people have trained and work hard in difficult conditions? I teach in further education, so my salary is nowhere near a teacher's salary in mainstream education. I have £33,000 worth of debt from university because of the interest. Paying conditions aren't brilliant, but I wouldn't dream of a strike just after a pay increase. They'll never be happy. Francis in Sussex says, everyone's pay has gone down since 2008. Why should doctors get another massive pay rise when everyone else is struggling? That is just not fair. Another person says, ask this doctor, why don't the British Medical Association let more doctors be trained if they want this lot to go? Good riddance. And another person says, I simply don't understand the doctor's argument about pay degradation. Surely everyone's pay in the NHS is being degraded. I know mine certainly has, but they're better paid than most. No sympathy whatsoever, says Natasha. Sam's in North Wales. Sam, you're a consultant radiologist, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm just, I've just pulled up now just to take the call. I'm currently going into Chester to cover a shift because of the strikes that are going on.
I hope it doesn't start at 12 o'clock, otherwise I think you're probably going to be late.
Yeah, it's okay, don't worry.
What do you make of the doctors striking?
I really think it's abhorrent. I've never striked one day in my life. My main point is that it is greed, because the nurses, whether they're striking or whether the doctors are striking, they're advocating only for themselves. They're not advocating for other departments like the cleaners or the radiographers.
Well, this is my point, and I asked Nick, I said, how would doctors getting more money improve the NHS? It'll make happier doctors. They will certainly say, right, I got more money, but what does that mean to the NHS? That doesn't actually mean that the patients will get a better service, will they, Sam?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I've worked hard. I knew what I was signing up for. I graduated in 2003. I'm now a consultant. I can tell you what my base pay is. It's 130 grand a year.
I mean, that's a lot of money, Sam. There's so many people who aren't paid nearly as much as that. Yeah.
Yeah, but when I first graduated, I was a junior doctor.
Mm-hmm.
I had no experience, really.
Yeah.
But in order for me to become a consultant radiologist, you gather experience.
Yeah, you do loads of exams and
and it's constant studying. And I knew as I'm going up the grades, I get better money for it. The same as the nurses, they know what they sign up for.
Well, and this is one of the points I made to Nick. If you sign up, you signed up in 2003, you knew what the doctors were, you knew what the doctor's salary was then. Yeah. And if you're signing up in the last few years, well, you're asking for pay restoration to 2008 levels, but you knew what was happening when you got into the profession.
Yeah, I mean, I was a doctor then in 2008, but these people are now these resident doctors. They're junior doctors. They weren't doctors then. They were still in high school or primary school.
Is there a divide? Is there a divide, Sam, in this with this strike going on? Are there people like you, maybe even other people who don't earn £130,000 a year, maybe people who are cleaners or nurses or whatever, who are saying, hold on a second, these doctors, I mean, do they agree with you when you're chatting to people in the tea rooms?
I'm I'm quite adamant when it comes to conversation. I'm quite assertive as well. Some agree, and some just look at me like I'm a loony. But but it is greed. It's obvious. Otherwise, they'd be advocating for everybody, but they're just doing it for themselves.
Very interesting.
That's all it is. But on the other swing of it, I've benefited from these people striking as well. These other doctors and nurses striking, and I'm not one to turn away money.
Yeah.
You know, so
who is? Yeah.
But it's made no effect to my life. This, because I was already on a good wage anyway. As I've gone up the pay grade. But I mean, so it's a little bit more here, a little bit more there.
Sam,
I
fascinating.
earn enough money, even though I'm a higher taxpayer.
Yeah. Sam, fascinating to talk to you, and thank you for getting in touch. That was Sam in North Wales. He's on his way in to cover for one of these striking junior doctors. Gemma says, what on earth is that GP on about? Giving junior doctors more money is not going to address the patients in the corridors issue. Surely giving them more money to do the same job has a detrimental effect on the NHS's budget. Gemma, you're absolutely right. That was exactly the point I was making. How does this mean that the doctors do a better job? What is the outcome for patients? Is it better? What do you think in all of this? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk about Trump in Scotland very, very soon. We're going to talk to our former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations and the deputy leader of the Alba Party. Stay with us here on Talk.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, this is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Between now and 1 o'clock, we're going to talk about those junior doctors. Loads of people getting in touch about that. One really good text I'm going to read out in a minute about saucepans. You're going to want to hear that. We're also going to talk about Donald Trump in Scotland, what he is saying there. We'll talk to the deputy leader of the Alba Party. We'll also speak to a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. We'll talk about Greg Wallace as well in terms of what he has been saying to The Sun today. Big interview with them saying, I'm not a grouper, sex pest or flasher, and John Turode is not a racist. The shamed MasterChef host still refusing to take blame. We'll get your thoughts on all sorts of issues as well. Be sure to give me a ring. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Stay with me between now and 1 o'clock, and indeed tomorrow I'm here between 10 and 1, and then Tuesday to Friday 4 till 7. Loads of Cardi B in your life. There's more than enough in mine, let me tell you. Stay with us here on Talk. Quite a lot of reaction to this doctor's story. Junior doctors on strike, 50,000 of them, although we now have to call them resident doctors. Mick in Wallington says entitled doctors are using our lives and health as weapons to get pay rises. It is deplorable behaviour. Phil says, why do people supporting the doctor's strike always use retail price inflation in their calculations and not consumer price inflation that is used everywhere else with wage disputes? That is a very good point, Phil. Jason in the Lake District saying, one thing that annoys me is getting asked if we do discounts for blue light workers, as if they are a downtrodden privileged group who should get special treatment. I explained that we were shafted during COVID and have an extra £50,000 of debt is due to our closure while you lot were all being paid by taxpayers. The world is upside down and the entitlement by those who don't warrant it is endemic across the public sector. That is Jason, who runs a small hotel in the Lake District. Lots of other people getting in touch about this as well. Kevin says, listen to what the average wage is, which is £36,000 a year. What about the people who are on the minimum wage, barely able to cope? The public service is wrecking the country. The amount of wasted money is a scandal. Andrew, this is a brilliant one. Andrew says, metaphorically speaking, the public have gone from wanting to bang saucepans to honour these doctors to wanting to hit them with the saucepan. Greedy doesn't do it justice. Why is every British Medical Association supporting doctor unable to answer the most simple questions? I don't feel I got answers to those questions, certainly. And I think what Andrew is saying, first of all, I think that is the message of the day. I think that is the best message that I have heard, actually. And I think what Sam said to me just before the news there was the phone call of the day. So far, anyway, we've got till 1 o'clock. But there is a huge frustration. And the thing, Andrew, and you make a really good point, the thing is that if you go around praising these people, calling them heroes and lions and brilliant, wonderful people who are all angels and everyone who works in the NHS is great, well, then this is what you get. This is what you get. This is what you get, this entitlement, you get this greed, you get these junior doctors saying, yeah, OK, we got a 22% pay rise, but we now want a 29.2% one. That is what happens. And, I mean, even Nick, who I spoke to earlier, the GP, said he didn't think it was sharp practice to get £250,000 worth of training on the state, essentially. You pay for about a fifth of that if you're a doctor, nearly 200 grand of your money and my money, and then off you go to Australia to a better paid job, not even serving the NHS. I think you should have to for 10 years before you're able to go anywhere else, except in exceptional circumstances. I just think it's really, really taking us for fools here. And a final one before we go to Scotland. Nick says, rarely have food delivered, you say, Pete. Last time I watched your programme, you resembled a serious salad dodger and likely had Deliveroo on speed dial. That's not very nice, Nick, is it? But I mean, I am partial to a takeaway. That is not a lie. I'm trying to be healthier, but you know, what I don't like are these radio and TV presenters who go on and on and on and on about their weight because it's incredibly dull and tedious. But yes, I do need to be healthier. That is correct. Donald Trump is in Scotland. He has been there. He has criticised Keir Starmer on a number of fronts. One of them has been immigration. Let's hear what he has been saying about that.
I mean, there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. But you're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, you know, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country. Nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe, many countries in Europe. Some people, some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe.
He spoke too about our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. This is what Trump had to say about that.
I like your Prime Minister. He's slightly more liberal than I am, as you've probably heard. But he's a good man. He got a trade deal done. And, you know, they've been working on this deal for 12 years. He got it done. It's a good deal. It's a good deal for the UK. So, no, I'll be seeing him tomorrow, I guess, tomorrow evening.
Donald Trump there talking about Keir Starmer. Well, let's speak to the Deputy Leader of the Alba Party, Neil Hanvey. Neil, you're very welcome to the programme. No doubt you are welcoming Donald Trump with open arms to Scotland.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Peter. I think there's two things that you've got to really do when the President of the United States comes to your country. You have to respect the office, but that doesn't really vacate the views that people have on the person. And I think the fundamental question is this a business trip? Or is this part of his engagement with the wider world? And we know that there's the meetings with First Minister John Swinney and with Keir Starmer, but also I think probably the big ticket item is his meeting with Ursula von der Leyen. But in terms of for Scotland, the cost and disruption has been quite extraordinary. The roads were completely blocked up and snarled up with traffic yesterday, and we're expecting the same to happen in and around Lossiemouth in the days ahead. And while I think it's fair to say Mr. Trump remains broadly unpopular in Scotland, with one small caveat that I think there are people who would never have been particularly sympathetic towards him are glad about his support for the defence of women's rights. But that doesn't really change his core politics, and that's why there will be demonstrations across Scotland on a range of different issues, not least the use of Lossiemouth for US Air Force jets. And I think that is, those are the core issues.
What's wrong with Lossiemouth being used for US Air Force jets? What's wrong with that?
Well, there's an irony there that, Starmer is meeting him in Lossiemouth, which is the birthplace of Ramsay MacDonald, the Labour Prime Minister, probably most closely resembling Mr. Starmer. But Lossiemouth now hosts United States Air Force planes, but of course not British Air Force planes after the loss of that as an airbase. The other issues that people will be exercised about is the situation in Gaza and the increasing concerns about enforced starvation, and that there needs to be much more forceful action to remedy that situation and ensure that aid gets through.
And I agree with you. I agree with you that that's a big issue. But surely the president being in the United Kingdom is actually an opportunity for our government to lobby him on those or on what are seen as important issues. It's clearly an important issue to Keir Starmer as well.
Yeah, well, precisely so. I mean, I think that it's a great issue for everyone in the world that kind of warfare, in inverted commas, is allowed to continue. But I think that there's been a dint in his in confidence that he really is interested in world peace, with the rather offhand way that both him and his vice president treated Ukrainian President Zelensky when they first met him. And I think there's an expectation that he needs to be much stronger. I mean, he is, allegedly the leader of the free world. And so his voice really matters. Okay. And it would be great that he didn't have to be lobbied on such a humanitarian crisis as the alleged genocide in Gaza.
Is there a sense in Scotland that there's any sense of being grateful to Donald Trump for bringing jobs and investment, especially to areas he is a multimillionaire, he has created a lot of jobs in Scotland, or is that forgotten?
Well, no, it's not forgotten, but I think there's been certainly in the golf course he's about to launch, which is clearly a business operation in memory of his mother, there were many developments and jobs promised in and around that resort when it was given planning permission several years ago, and none of those jobs have materialised. And whilst investment is always welcome in Scotland, the fact that there hasn't been the follow through to the scale that was promised is a concern. And I know that people in that part of the world in the northeast of Scotland will be exercised because of the blight on a beautiful part of the Scottish coastline, but the lack of the jobs that were promised and have not been delivered.
Okay. Neil, thank you. Appreciate your contribution today. That's Neil Hanvey there, who is the Deputy Leader of the Alba Party. We want to talk now to the former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administration, Steve Gill. Steve, thanks for joining us. How important is Scotland to Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think obviously the fact that he's got family connections there is very important to him. It is clearly part of his heart. And he has business interests there as well. And I find it hard to believe that a beautiful golf course is a blight on the territory. I mean, it's not like they're doing clear-cut mining or something like that. And again, with that particular golf course just opening, I think it's a little premature to question how many jobs are created. There are jobs being created that weren't there before.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, look, the net result is not a bad thing, and all those people complaining about the extra police presence, well, those police officers aren't complaining about their overtime payments, let me tell you. Steve, it's an interesting one, actually, in regard to what he said about migration as well. We heard that clip just a few minutes ago. It says quite a lot, I think, sitting here in London, that it takes the President of the United States to bring this up. I mean, Donald Trump is a very controversial figure in many regards. He's got a huge mandate. He is the president, and he has created very decisive action on immigration, and that is something that no doubt he will talk to Keir Starmer about when they meet tomorrow.
Well, I think, as the president pointed out, when you look at the flood, millions of illegal immigrants coming into the U.S. During the Biden years, the fact that has been almost completely stopped, and you're seeing the outflow, both with deportation and those self-deporting, really changing that entire balance. And anybody who doesn't agree with President Trump with respect to the flood of illegals into, say, for example, London, go take a drive through East London if you're a white Brit. Rather than that, go take a walk through East London and see how you feel.
Especially if you're a woman. There's a lot of pressure, certainly, on Keir Starmer here in the UK to recognise Palestine as a state. That's something Trump has no truck with at all. He's been very dismissive towards Macron in that regard. Let's just see a clip now about what Trump has said about President Macron. Macron, of course, the President of France, has said that we can't show that clip just at this moment, but what he has said is that France is going to recognise Palestine as a state. Trump is, there's no chance of him doing that, Steve, anyway.
Yeah, I don't think that's
sorry,
going to
Steve.
happen.
We're just going to play this clip now. Apologies, we had a problem with our system behind the scenes. We'll play the clip and then get your reaction, Steve. This is what Trump said about Macron.
That's what he does. I mean, you know, that's fine if he does that. That's up to him. It's not up to me. I'm with the United States. I'm not with France. I think it's terrible what happened with Hamas. They tapped everybody along, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what response Israel has to that. But it's getting to be that time.
Steve, what do you make of what President Trump said there in regard to the Middle East?
You know, I think there's still about 50 hostages or the remains of hostages that are still being held by Hamas. If they wanted to stop the leverage that Netanyahu, the U.S., and the world has over them, they would release the remains and the hostages and stop that being the main focal point, the talking point, allowing the continued attacks upon them. And frankly, we've seen the videos. We know the truth that it is Hamas that has been redirecting food and medicine from the people of Gaza who are suffering so badly to their own soldiers, to their own benefits. And I think that that has not gotten enough exposure, and Hamas is not doing right by the people of Gaza. I think President Trump and the rest of the world want people to be able to get the food, to get the medicine. It is Hamas that is blocking that, the same way they're blocking a peace deal by not releasing the hostages and the remains, so that we can move to the next step of trying to restore a peaceful operation rather than a military operation in Gaza.
Wise words, and thank you for them. That's Steve Gill, who's a former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Lots of people getting in touch with voice notes. Let's hear one from Paul. Paul has been in touch about what he thinks is broken Britain. Let's hear what Paul has to say.
Morning, Peter. Paul in Burnley. Regarding Natalie Brahma-Pearl, the CEO of Portsmouth, attempting to cover up the wrongdoings of an asylum seeker and trying to silence a local reform councillor. This typifies what's going on in this country, where the establishment, the old political parties, politicians, the police, the judiciary, the legal system and academia have all chosen a side, and it's not the white British working class. Not good, Peter. Really, really not good.
Paul, thanks so much for your thoughts there. I'm sure what Paul meant to say was the alleged wrongdoings of the asylum seeker, because of course that's not proven. But a Portsmouth City Council spokesman said the council does not comment on any matters relating to individual members of staff. Paul, the thrust of what you're saying there I think is perfectly reasonable. We have invited Natalie Brahma-Pearl, the Chief Executive of Portsmouth City Council, onto this programme. So far we haven't received an answer. Let's hear another voice note now from Peter. This is on small boats.
Hello, Peter. If the government found there was an organisation that was collecting illegal immigrants halfway across the channel, bringing them in on boats and putting them in hotels and giving them money and everything else, wouldn't the government think that they were part of the gang setup? Oh, no, sorry, I forgot. It's the government that's bringing them in on the boats, putting them in hotels and paying for them. I think they're in cahoots with the so-called gangs. Great show, thanks a lot.
Peter, thanks for your thoughts, appreciate those. Thank you also to Susan, who says, I work in an administration role in my local hospital and I can honestly say you couldn't meet a more arrogant and entitled bunch of people than the junior doctors. They flounce around the hospital thinking they're God's gift to the world, says Susan. Susan, again, this is the problem. When you say first of all, thank you for your message, and you make perfect sense within that, Susan. I'm not saying all junior doctors are arrogant. You have far more experience of it than I do, Susan. But when you say they're all angels, they're all wonderful, oh, they got us through COVID, everything's marvellous, aren't they all brilliant? There are a load of doctors, a load of people who work in the NHS who are lazy as sin. There are people who don't do their job well. There are people who punch in, do their job, or sit there and punch out, collect their big fat pensions, and that's fine. Not all doctors are angels and beautiful, magical, wonderful people who heal the sick. That is not what they are. They're just like you and me. They just have a bit more medical training. And I think if we just remembered that they're paid a heck of a lot of money to do, yes, a difficult job. It's not the world's easiest job. Many of them do a great job. Many people in the NHS do a fantastic job. But the NHS employs over 1 million people. Not all of them are brilliant people. Although, Susan, you sound like someone who does her job very, very well. John in Blackpool says, why don't the doctors say it as it is instead of trying to justify their wage increase by throwing debatable facts and figures at us? Just say, we believe our job is underpaid. Good afternoon, Peter. I'll read that out in a second. Sam says, I actually think that they do deserve the pay. If we didn't have all the management and other waste, would we complain? Why should we be complaining at the cost of subsidised... We should be complaining about the cost of subsidised meals in government and the cost of the House of Lords, says Samantha. Well, thanks for that. Thank you as well to Luke, who says, good afternoon, Peter. Ignore the previous message regarding you being a salad dodger. If everyone only ate organic quinoa and rabbit food, life would be incredibly boring and tedious. Enjoy and eat and enjoy life. Food is one of the joys of existence, says Luke. Right, I'm off for a salad, but in just a second, we're going to hear from you. If you want to get your voice on the air, 0344 499 1000. We'll hear some more voice notes as well. You can send those in on the same number, dead easy, same way you send a voice note to anybody else. Plenty more to discuss. We'll also talk about Greg Wallace between now and 1 o'clock. Stay with us.
So the police have basically banned anybody from going outside the Bell Hotel to demonstrate in any way, shape or form. Is that right?
To be fair, this is the first I've heard of it. We had a planned demonstration this evening,
right,
which has been planned for the past week. The problem is that these demonstrations have been taken over by a political agenda, by left and right, which is absolutely ridiculous. Right. This is not anything, this is not a political fight.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Christopher on Twitter, who says at the 12 o'clock news, he was listening to it, he says they had a short interview with a demonstrator in Scotland. She absolutely epitomised what is wrong with some of these bedwetting liberals. She denounced Trump and went on to say that everybody in the world is equal, and that's how we should treat people. Everybody is not equal, and she is part of the problem we now have, says Christopher. Thanks to Nick as well. He says, I was just kidding about you being a solid dodger, Peter. I'm curious what your reaction would be. I do enjoy the show. That's great, Nick, no problem. And actually, Alex Phillips has left me some fruit here. So I've got some strawberries, some cherries, and indeed some blackberries. I'm about to eat one of the blackberries as we hear an immigration voice note from Nick. This is what he has to say.
Nobody ever wants to talk about the influx of immigration in terms of anything more than numbers. It's just numbers. We can't afford to put these people up. We haven't got the infrastructure, etc. Nobody ever talks about the real elephant in the room, which is the culture change, which is destroying the fabric of our nation. Culture change. And we all know what I'm talking about there. But nobody wants to talk about it. Have a good weekend, Peter.
Nick, thank you very much indeed. You make a very good point there. I've just had a blackberry and a cherry as well, as Nick was having that, which was absolutely lovely, so thank you for that. Nick made some really good points. I'll speak to Mandy in Felixstowe. Mandy, you're very welcome to the programme. She's given us a ring on 0344 499 1000.
Good morning, Peter.
Hello there. Show. Thank you.
All this with Trump coming over, and obviously he says things how they are. Later on in the year, he's coming over for a state visit.
That's right.
Right. When Macron was over, he was able to talk to Parliament.
Yeah, correct.
Parliament has already said Trump will not be allowed to speak there. Why?
Well, I think it's outrageous. And, you know, Zelensky spoke there. We've had various people historically, the Queen, Nelson Mandela, other people. He is the president of Obama. He is the president of the United States, Mandy. I presume you think he should be allowed to speak?
Yes, I think he should.
And if people don't want to go, they don't have to go. No one is forcing them to go to listen to it.
No, exactly. But we need, well, this with what's happening with Palestine now, and Macron wanting to sign up Palestine as a own.
Recognise it as a country,
state.
yeah, as a state, yeah. Do you think what do you think of that?
I think it's disgusting.
Okay.
The way him and Starmer is, I don't think it will be long before Starmer's following suit and saying, yes, we're right.
Mandy, thanks for your thoughts there. That's Mandy in Felixstowe. Let's go to Kevin in Portsmouth. Kevin, I think it's the doctor's strike you want to talk to us about.
It is indeed. Good afternoon, Peter, and bon appetit with your cherries and blackberries.
Thank you.
Right, I was training a newly minted doctor who started the very first job a couple of weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was to do the 3 years in the UK, off to Australia.
Yeah.
Everything's teed up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, according to this doctor, I was told everything's been done, sorted out with the Aussie authorities, work permits, visas, the whole bit, ready to go. It's the case of booking the tickets and obviously making the grade in terms of work experience and whatever else they have to do. So that's the first point. So when your chat saying, no, it doesn't happen, well, yes, it does.
Well, you know for a fact it happens. And I don't know about you, Kevin, but as a taxpayer, we're subsidising that person's training to the tune of to about 4/5 of it, about 80% of it, we pay for. It costs £250,000 to train a doctor, and they're then not even serving the NHS for even 10 years and going off to Australia.
Yeah, now, two further points. We'll stick with this doctor. So I said, well, look, suppose you didn't have any student debt at all in terms of tuition fees, books, skeletons, or whatever else they need for their studies. Didn't cost you a single penny, but you got to work in the NHS for 10 years.
Yeah.
First 5 years, NHS exclusively. The second 5 years, you can start building up your private practice.
Yeah.
And after 10 years, to the day, you're free to do whatever you like. You leave 9 years and 364 days.
Yeah.
That's it. You repay the whole, a full amount, the full £500,000.
I totally agree. Listen, there will be some.
This person agreed to that.
Yeah.
I said, that's a good idea. I'll go with that.
Yeah.
And the last point, her cohort at her university, something like a third of them don't have jobs. NHS can't find any postings for them, and yet we're told we're short of doctors, we're short of absolutely everything. We're putting in doctors from all over the world, and here we got a cohort of newly minted doctors from a medical school, medical university, and they can't find work.
And also, Kevin,
is going on?
Well, you're absolutely right, Kevin, and also, if you're in a situation where you're paying doctors who are in those jobs already more, well, there is by definition going to be less money to pay new doctors coming in. So those third of people who were training £250,000 for their 6-year course who can't get jobs, well, they're not going to get jobs anyway either.
No. But I mean, the whole thing is completely ridiculous. On the one hand, we're told the BMA is artificially throttling back the number of doctors being trained, so we've got to bring them in from overseas. The next thing you find out is a third of a course can't find work for what, I don't know what the reason is. But I mean, it's just symptomatic of the utter incompetence and waste in the NHS. You know, and this doctor was saying, you know, my future's in Australia. I might come back, I might not.
Yeah.
Weather's better.
Yeah.
Beer's not.
Pays better.
The beer pays better. The beer isn't better, mind you. But let's not go there.
No, it's not. Kevin, can I ask you something, Kevin? I know you're in Portsmouth, and it's absolutely fine to say, do you know what, Peter? I either don't have an opinion on it or I don't want to talk about it. That's absolutely fine. And I'm putting you on the spot here, and it's fine to say no, Kevin. But you know this story about the council chief saying to the councillor in Portsmouth that he can't talk about this situation that has emerged in regard to the asylum seeker charged with sexual offences. I don't know if that's on your radar. Have you heard about that?
Oh,
we've been covering up.
Certainly is.
I just wondered what your thoughts are. Obviously, we'll be careful. We don't want to prejudice the trial. But Kevin, I just wondered, being in Portsmouth, what your thoughts are on that.
I'm actually horrified that the chief executive of Portsmouth City Council is actively covering up criminal activity. I would have thought that makes her an accessory, and she should be in the cells too.
I'm sure she would deny that, and I should say that Portsmouth City Council say the council does not comment on any matters relating to individual members of staff. But I have asked Natalie Brahma-Pearl to come on the programme. Unsurprisingly, she hasn't got back to us, Kevin.
You've had George Magic on the programme,
we have.
though, haven't you?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
George, I know George, and he's a very fine fellow, and he's absolutely incandescent with fury about this, and it's just not right. And we can't, you know, if someone has committed offences of that magnitude, you can't just.
Well, we don't know if they've committed them. They're alleged offences, Kevin. But you're absolutely right. I think the public is right to be concerned, certainly.
You can't say, oh, we're not going to talk about it. You know, if an allegation is made and that allegation is credible, and it seems that it is.
Well, it's been charged. It is being charged. The Crown Prosecution Service thinks it's credible. Kevin, thanks for that, and thanks for your thoughts on the other matter as well. And of course, Kevin did have an opinion on that. Sometimes I put people on the spot, and it's fine to say, do you know what, I haven't thought about that or whatever. But Kevin, of course, had a very good opinion on it. Matt's been in touch with a voice note on immigration.
Hi Peter, it's Matt from Yorkshire. Just a quick note on immigration. My first point is, I don't understand why Keir Starmer just doesn't get it. Anyone who lands in this country illegally should be immediately taken to a secure detention centre until their immigration status can be understood, and they can either stay here legally or they can be sent back. My second point is, if the Royal Navy can't do it, let's ask Donald Trump to get the US Navy in the Channel to stop the boats, and they'll definitely send them back to France. Thanks, keep it up, good work, cheers.
Thank you, Matt. Great voice note. Andy's been in touch as well.
Morning, Pete. Andy from Birmingham. Hope you're well, mate. It's just refreshing going on about Trump, though. Within 10 minutes of him landing, he's basically said what most of us in this country are thinking or want about the immigration. We're 100% right that the whole of UK and Europe are being ruined by immigration. He's for the Americans. I love him or hate him, but, you can't argue that he's 100% for America and the way he is. And I wish Starmer was any like a fraction of that. At the end of the day, that he's not in it for us, Starmer. He's not thinking about the proper UK people. A bit depressing, I know, but we've got to crack on. Anyway, great show, mate. Ta-da.
Andy, thanks. Another great voice note there. I hope your bins are being collected up there in Birmingham, and you make some very, very good points. As you say, just off the plane, and he's already speaking for many, many people here in this country. Mr. Bones says, I love the show. Disappointed in you not understanding the doctor's hideous £18 an hour. You get more in Little. I think that person has their tongue in their cheek. I'm not sure you earn that amount of money in Little. But anyway, Anne has been in touch and says, what is the difference between God and a junior doctor? The answer is God doesn't think he's a doctor, which is a very interesting point. And Shane in Sydney, who is a regular viewer who watches us down there in Sydney, says, I'm having a sausage roll. Thanks, mate. Give Jack a hug. That's very kind. Shane, appreciate that. Always appreciate your loyalty to this programme. Lots more to discuss. In fact, we are going to talk about Greg Wallace next, the MasterChef host, disgraced MasterChef host. He has done a big interview, big exclusive with The Sun today. He says, I'm not a grouper, sex pest or flasher, and John Turode is not a racist. The shamed MasterChef host still refuses to take the blame. We'll talk about that with the showbiz expert. We'll get all your thoughts as well on that and many, many other aspects between now and 1 o'clock. So get your call in. You've 25 minutes to do so. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Estrella Girl Bites on Twitter says, Peter's belief that Israel can do no wrong is pretty irritating. I do believe that the Israeli government has done many things wrong. I've been critical of Netanyahu previously. I've been critical of many people in his cabinet. They are certainly not doing all they can to make sure that people in Gaza don't starve. That is a big issue we've been talking about even on this show. He also says lots to discuss, lots to talk about as well. He's turning into a bit of a shock jock. Oh dear. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, and I will try to stop saying there's lots to discuss and lots to talk about. But there is lots to discuss and there is lots to talk about as well. I didn't realise I said that, but you don't realise, I suppose, what you're saying when you say it. You're perhaps more conscious of these things than I am. But there we are. Thank you to everybody else who has been in touch on Twitter as well, including Blondie, who says Donald Trump is right. Glad he called it illegal immigration and not wookie irregular. Illegal is what it is. Can we borrow him for a bit to sort our country out? And one more from Nick, he says the British Medical Association has absolutely no control over medical student numbers or medical training quotas at any stage. They're not a regulator, just a trade union, and not even a closed shop. Please stop repeating these ridiculous muggle myths. I don't think I was repeating any of that, actually, Nick, but I'm very happy to clarify that point and to read out your message. Right then, let's talk about Greg Wallace, because he has said that he's done his first interview with The Sun. He says that I am mentioned in the same breath as Jimmy Savile and Hugh Edwards. It is horrific. I'm not saying I'm not guilty of stuff, but I don't think I'm a wrong'un. I'm a greengrocer from Peckham. I thrived in that environment. It was jovial and crude. He also says that John Torode isn't a racist. John Torode, of course, has lost his job as well. Entertainment reporter Beverly Lyons is with us now. Beverly, what do you make of this exclusive interview with The Sun today?
Well, you know, he is trying to clarify from his point of view what has actually happened as he sees it. Now, obviously, this went to court. There were 45 allegations. They were upheld, the complaints.
I don't think it went to court per se, but there was an internal investigation in the BBC.
Investigation. Yes, sorry, People's Court. But actually, what's happened is he's explaining it from his point of view, and of course he has since said that he has neurodiversity. He's on the autism spectrum. That of course may explain some behaviours with regard to, for example, I have a friend with autism who doesn't always realise how abrupt they're being, or how, you know, direct, or perhaps how rude sometimes they're being. And that can possibly be put down to that. The fact that he was accused of flashing, that didn't explain it. What he's now said is that the flashing incident was in fact something where he was getting ready in his dressing room. There were friends that came to his door. He put a sock on his privates. He answered it for 1 second, just as a joke between friends, and disappeared. He said he's not a groper. He said that he exchanged phone numbers with a woman, and he thought that that was therefore giving him the green light that she may have been attracted to him, and he pinched her bottom. So he's kind of explaining things that we've all heard about and maybe not heard the detail on. So it's quite interesting.
Do you have any sympathy for him, Beverly? Do you think he's been hard done by? Because some of the behaviours that he's been exhibiting and has been found to have exhibited are totally unacceptable in any workplace.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, the fact that there were 45 different accounts of things that were reported suggests that there's a bigger issue here, and that he's going to have a look at himself. Do I have sympathy for him? He's a human being. He's flawed, but I don't know. And you know, I wouldn't want to say I feel sorry for him, because I don't know him sufficiently to know really what his character's like and how much of this is just after the horse is bolted.
It's interesting what he said about John Torode as well. He said they were never friends, but of course John Torode went as well for apparently using a very, very serious racist term a number of years ago. I don't think anybody should use racist terms in any context. I don't think they certainly shouldn't do it in the workplace. I wonder if you think, covering these issues as you do, Beverly, that perhaps it's not necessarily a witch hunt or anything like that, but there is a sense from the BBC that they want to kind of cleanse MasterChef and keep the brand of a very, very successful programme, obviously, in the next series with new hosts.
Well, of course, you have a strong brand, so you're going to the brand, as they said, is bigger, arguably, than the people within it. So people are always going to try and protect that brand to a certain extent. Interestingly, of course, the BBC will still be airing the celebrity, well, they'll be airing the MasterChefs with them in it. And I think that there's still a discussion over whether they'll be doing the celebrity or the Christmas specials as well. So whilst they may be cleansing or protecting, they've still not put a full halt to it. So again, it's one of those ones. I think it's the more pressure that the public place on these things, the more there is an argument to pull this off the air, but it's all to do with supply and demand.
Certainly, you're absolutely right, Beverly. Thank you. That's Beverly Lyons, their entertainment reporter. That exclusive story is in The Sun today. I'm not a grouper, sex pest or flasher, and John's not a racist, says Greg Wallace. Exclusive interview with him. First one since he was axed by the BBC. The shamed MasterChef host still refusing to take the blame for what is happening. President Trump says Willie is loved in Scotland. Whoever says he is not hasn't got a clue. Well, there are plenty of people who are protesting him, so there are some people certainly who don't like him. Jackie's been in touch on Donald Trump. This is what she says in a voice note.
Afternoon, Peter. Trump derangement syndrome was enforced with your Alba Party interview. What is it with our politicians who view a president who acts in the interests of the American people a pariah, but their actions of the British politicians who act against their own citizens' best interests is somehow okay? Don't understand it. Great show.
Jackie, thank you. Plenty more opinions coming your way in just a second. You want to get your voice on there between now and 1 o'clock? Send me a voice note, or better still, give me a ring. 0344 499 1000.
If you want to know what's really wrong with this country, fundamentally the decision was taken beginning in the 1960s to abolish the idea of personal responsibility, to explain all crime as some kind of reaction to bad social conditions or abuse or whatever it might be, and to cease to enforce law as law is to cease to get rid of the old concept of punishment. As it were, the working maxim of the prison system in this country used to be the due punishment of responsible persons.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Alison, who says, I quite like Greg Wallace until he tried to blame autism for his behaviour. You can be socially awkward and unempathetic, which I am myself, but I don't go around pinching people's bottoms and covering myself with nothing but socks, says Alison in Billericay. It's a very, very fair point. Thank you for that. Let's hear from Joe in Leicestershire, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Joe, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there.
Yeah, just talking about illegal migrants. I'm a little bit, well, more than a little bit fed up of the government, whoever represents them, it doesn't matter which party, just constantly making excuses. If what are the total amount of migrants we've had come over by boat?
It's a heck of a lot. Certainly since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, it's more than 40,000.
That's since Keir Starmer, you know. They've been coming over before.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Something like 50,000 a year, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, so if they all came over at once, let's just say they all turned up at once, what would everyone say? You know, they'd look at it in a completely different way to what they're looking at it now. It's almost as though it's allowed, it's organised, it's not being looked upon as an emergency when it actually is.
Well, I think there's a lot in that, Joe, and I think that there's a lot that the sort of political will needs to be in this, and I think if political leaders don't want to solve the problem, well, the problem isn't going to be solved. I mean, do you think there's anybody who actually wants to solve it who's in the government now or who could be in the government?
No, I think Keir Starmer's got his own objectives, and I don't think they have anything to do with him staying in this country. I think he's looking after himself. I think he's going to hang out everyone who's in his party to dry. They haven't got a chance to get him back in. The only party is reform, isn't it? Because there isn't anybody else out there with any power as such to do anything about it. But, I mean, by the time they get in, Peter, how many more are going to be here? I mean, I understand the protest, and I totally agree with these women that are concerned for their safety. And, I mean, my local hotel used to have them in, and our local MP got them out. But we don't have the migrants in our hotel, but we have the migrants that are now here legally who work for the security firm that looks after the hotels. We have all them staying there. And that's a Britannia hotel as well.
Okay, well, Britannia aren't here to defend themselves, Joe, but you're absolutely right in the sense that Britannia have had as a hotel grouping, and we now know in Canary Wharf in London as well, there are going to be people there. And I think, you know, a lot of taxpayers, I don't know about you, Joe, but a lot of taxpayers sort of say, you know, I'd love to stay in a hotel like that. That'd be great. That'd be great to stay there for, you know, a few nights or a long weekend or a nice break. But that's beyond the financial power of many, many people. And especially when you see some of these rooms that are advertised, they don't always go for these rates, but, you know, £425 a night and things like that. There are a lot of people who say, well, that's totally outside what I can do financially. So, but yet people who've contributed absolutely nothing to our country are getting that for free. It's the fairness issue that is absolutely at the heart of this, Joe.
It is as well. I mean, and it's also the fact that, you know, these people are coming over and they're being used to luxury. So what are they going to do when you take them out of this luxury? How are they going to react to that?
Well, that's a very fair point, yeah. Joe, listen, thanks for your thoughts, intelligent thoughts there. I appreciate that. We've just heard from Downing Street that the Prime Minister has been speaking to the President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, this morning. The three leaders talked about the situation in Gaza. They agreed it's appalling, emphasising the urgent need for an immediate ceasefire, for Israel to lift all restrictions on aid and urgently provide those suffering in Gaza with the food they so desperately need. Says number 10, the Prime Minister set out how the UK will be taking forward plans to work with partners such as Jordan to airdrop aid and evacuate children requiring medical assistance. All three leaders agreed it would be vital to ensure robust plans are in place to turn an urgently needed ceasefire into lasting peace. They discussed their intention to work closely on a plan, building on collaboration to date that would pave the way to a long-term solution on security in the region. They agreed once this plan was worked up, they would seek to bring in other partners, including the region, to advance it. They also talked about Ukraine. This is the leaders of France, Germany and the UK on a call this morning. Downing Street has just told us that they spoke about Ukraine as well. agreed there must be no let-up of pressure on Vladimir Putin to come to the negotiating table. They said it remains as important as ever to support Ukraine, that they're in the strongest possible position. And on Iran's nuclear programme, they also talked about that as well. The leaders agreed that unless Iran cooperated with the International Atomic Energy Association, I can't remember, the IAEA, the body that certainly looks into these things anyway and monitors Iran's nuclear programme, unless Iran cooperates with that and return to diplomacy, sanctions will be reinstated at the end of August. So that is what the three leaders of France, this country, the United Kingdom, and of course the German leader Friedrich Merz were agreeing this morning. That is just out from Downing Street, and they have told us that in the last few minutes. Grace is on the line from London. Grace, you're very welcome to the programme. She's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Grace, what would you like to say?
Many things. I'll concur briefly with the comment about Greg Wallace and autism. I'm on the autistic spectrum, and it's very irritating hearing people like him say stupid things like that.
It's all to do with my autism that I didn't wear pants and took part in these activities. Like I know quite a few autistic people, and they don't go around doing that.
Exactly, yeah. But with regard to Trump, there's something incredibly ironic about him complaining that immigration is destroying Europe when the United States of America kind of exists because of immigration from Europe. So, and you know, his...
Are they the same though, Grace? Because when you have a country that was many immigrants came to America, of course, and they built a great country, whereas there are lots of people coming to this country who have no interest in British values or indeed American values, and Donald Trump realised that immigration, which can be useful sometimes, isn't useful all the time.
I think that each human being is different and has different motivations and different values. So there's a very interesting discussion to be had about both of those different immigration situations, current immigration and immigration to America. But I think when you talk about values, I'm wondering about how we define those. When people immigrated to initiate what is now the United States of America, some went there because they wanted to practice Christianity in a particular way, and some went there because of wanting more things and more land for themselves. And I can't help but feel that one of the big problems we have right now in the West generally, both in America and in Europe, is that more and more people just want more things for themselves, not least the junior doctors who are striking.
Isn't that a natural human instinct, to want your life to be better?
Well, to some extent it is, but if we want society to be decent, then we actually need to sometimes tackle our natural instincts and think about what is greater. I mean, South Park this week took the mickey out of Donald Trump. I've not seen it. I don't like South Park particularly.
I don't either, really. I don't find it funny.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only time I really watched it was when I was in eating disorders unit, and I had to watch it because it was what was on and I had to be in the room. And it's not my kind of humour, but the way that they this week had him in bed with Satan is not... I'm not saying that Trump is a Satan supporter, but they were making a point, I think, that a lot of the things he stands for are really opposed to the values that Christianity holds about putting other people first sometimes, rather than just wanting more for oneself. The way that he's so supportive of material greed and arrogance, I think that is a real problem here in the West. People wanting more stuff for themselves that I think is really damaging to our society. Whereas for a long time, some of the things that we talk about as British values, they were linked to Jesus' teaching that we shouldn't just want more for ourselves. We should love our neighbours and things like that. And I think that the more we just pander to our own greed, the more society breaks down, including water bosses taking stupid amounts of money and junior doctors demanding more money and more money and more money. And these problems are arising because rather than thinking, how can I care about other people, even if I feel like I want more for myself, we're actually just prioritising greed. And that's partly because of how capitalism has come to be the dominant religion.
Okay, Grace, really interesting thoughts there, almost philosophical thoughts there from Grace, who arguing that we need perhaps a little bit of grace. Let's squeeze in a final call from Yvonne in Cheshire. Yvonne, I've literally got about 2 minutes, but do make your points. What would you like to say?
Hello, Peter. Hi.
Hi
there. Thanks for taking the call, and I'll be as brief as I can. We have two doctors in the family. They're both GPs. They're both 36. Their cohort 10 years ago, 80% of the cohort, after doing their FY1, FY2, which is make them doctors before they go training, went on locuming because they earned 5 times the amount doing the same job in the hospital as they could going on a training contract.
That can't be right. I mean, that's a crazy system.
It was a crazy system. I was at a function with the local MP at the time, who was a Conservative MP. I raised this with him. He said it was madness. He said, what was the solution? Can we do a paper? We did all of that. My son was involved in the paper as well. He said he would take it to the Health Secretary. Nothing ever happened. We reckon it was hundreds of millions a year it's costing the NHS, and this was all because of the start of the junior doctors, with the starting pay. There was a solution I gave to him, which was, when you were talking to Nick, the GP, before, was tie them in to a contract with the NHS after they have it. It was £250,000 a year to train them, and we're talking. My son's 36 now, so he went at 18, so that's 18 years ago. They were all flitting all over the place. My son's actually up in Scotland, no better up there. But the point is that if you tie them into a contract,